This is a message to all my comrades in Colombia. It's Saturday night and it's about 9 o'clock. Tomorrow is the second round of your presidential election, and I've been following the election from afar. I was very excited after the first round when the centre-left candidate was leading. I even expressed my joy to sympathetic politicians in other South American countries. Don't get too excited, they warned me. The right wing will go to any lengths to subvert the will of the people. They will do anything to get their candidates into office. They will arrest, detain, disappear, and/or murder to get their way. In the last weeks, I've watched their dire prophecies coming true. So tonight, late as it is, I must speak out. 12 years ago, some of you will remember, in 2010, I performed The Wall in Bogotá. And I remember that local students were protesting a visit by the then President of the United States, George W. Bush. Well, let me tell you, nothing much has changed in the United States. Bush and Biden are the same animal. Biden will be supporting the extreme right in your elections in using all of the above undemocratic means to steal this election from the people. Basta! All people, everywhere, should have a right to a genuine democracy with the freedom to express their desires, demands, and their dreams without fear of reprisal or detention or even death at the hands of a police force or military that is allied to the ruling elite. The people of Colombia are sick of not having these basic freedoms. They are sick of being locked up for speaking out. They are sick and tired of seeing their friends' and families' lives taken by those who think nothing of spilling the people's blood on the altar of profit. For years now, Colombians have raised their voices, crying out for a just peace. They've been answered with riot police committing massacres and paramilitary death squads killing social leaders and human rights defenders in the dark of night. They've seen young activists hunted down and thrown in jail. Young activists who supported last year's national strike are being rounded up in a series of police sweeps cynically called Plan Democracy. As of yesterday, at least 26 young people have been arrested. In the city of Cali, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, 9 protesters are at the moment on hunger strike demanding their freedom. There is graphic evidence, photos and videos showing gun-toting thugs alongside police attacking unarmed protesters. And even though Colombia is seeing the worst electoral violence in 12 years, none of these thugs are being arrested. Free and fair elections must not be bathed in voters' blood. Stories are already rife of the irregularities and fraud that plagued congressional elections earlier and the first round of the presidential vote. I fear that my friends in South America may be right, and we are seeing a preemptive coup being carried out in plain sight against the people's candidates, Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez. I hope I pronounce that name right. So, I joined the Colombian people and international solidarity movements and democracy and human rights activists to demand, in the name of truth and decency, 1, the immediate release of young activists detained as part of the so-called planned democracy, and an end to the ongoing raids. 2, an end to the political violence that is taking lives every day and making a mockery of these elections in Colombia. 3, that the voice of the Colombian people be heard and respected in this election, and that voice, the voice of the people, be allowed to usher in a new dawn that reflects the needs and wishes of all the people of Colombia, not just the needs and wishes of a corrupt ruling elite. With love, your brother, Roger Waters. Get to the polls. You have to win this election in Colombia, not just for yourselves, but for all of us. We need you.
Hi, it's great to be on here again, and I'm glad everybody's joining you or joining us. We just heard from Roger Waters. What a great contribution he made. And I know he's saying, of course, we at AFTJ, that we don't endorse candidates. He was expressing his own point of view. But he saw our live stream last time for the first round and got right in touch with us and said that he wanted to put out a statement and could we help him get a statement out to the Colombian people. And he really talked about some important things. So you heard the demands at the end and the repression that is going on around Colombia right now as part of this so-called plan democracy. And of course, planned democracy is not about democracy, it's a mockery, it's planned mockery of democracy. But this is something that's funded by the United States government. The police that are out in the streets, the riot gear they're wearing, the tear gas, the helicopters flying overhead, that's all comes straight out of our taxes, those of us who are from the United States. So this is something we're very involved in, and this is part of what's going down right now. There have been raids happening all over Colombia against political activists, young political activists, and there's something like 320,000 police and armed forces that are spread around the country right now, just in case there's some sort of a popular uprising. Why would that be? But anyway, that's part of what's going on. The vote has been taking place with a number of irregularities. There have been tainted ballots that have shown up in different spots, and our own teams have witnessed some of the tainted ballots. In we have teams today. I mean, there's groups, we're coordinating with different people and different groups from different areas. Of course, I'm with the Alliance for Global Justice, and the Alliance for Global Justice and the Central Pacifico are the ones that are sponsoring and presenting this live stream today. But we are in touch with people in Zipaquirá, in Bogota, here in Cali, and we've had teams in the north of Cauca, which is one of the most dangerous and threatened areas in all of Colombia. And I'll just say that from the north of Cauca, we've also gotten several reports of irregularities. Um, for instance, there were areas roped off in Quinto where observers were not allowed to go or to enter. There were military people in the voting polling area with cameras taking pictures. I don't know if that's allowed or not. It's definitely strange. There were people using multiple users of one ID number. So these are some of the things that are going down. But the saddest and most distressing news we've heard so far was the murder of two witnesses for the historic PAC, the Pacto Histórico, which is the center-left party that has the candidate Gustavo Petro's neck and neck with Rodolfo Hernandez. But today two of the witnesses for the Pacto Histórico were murdered in the town of Guapi in Cauca, in the Barrio San Martin. They are Wilmer Otilio Espelinel and Roberto Carlos Rivas. But they're the first two deaths we've heard about so far. But this whole campaign has been marked by the highest level of threats and violence in 12 years. So I think we're getting ready in a few minutes or a few seconds to pass the camera to Shanti McMaster, who's at our desk in Bogota, where we have a team there. Yeah, we have Bogota, Zipaquirá, and the north of Cauca and Cali is where we have people right now. And I'll be very anxious to hear about that. But I just want to say that the one thing we're convinced of, speaking to people in the countryside and in the cities, is that whoever wins this election, the people are going to keep moving forward and keep struggling until they are the ones that win everything. Shanti, are we ready to pass over? Hey, Shanti.
Hello, yes. Hi. Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Shanti. I actually currently live here in Bogota. I work with the Union Patriotica here in Bogota, which is involved with the Pacto Histórico. And yeah, I think they did a really good job before explaining, the connection with imperialism, with the connection with countries like the United States, transnational corporations, which very, often use paramilitaries, very much play an active role in the violence. So the things that happen here in Colombia are very, very relevant and very necessary to talk about. Also, because of how, horrible all the things are, but also like very much the role the West plays in these things. So yeah, I'm here in Bogota. I managed to get out to Usme a little bit. So Usme is a part of Bogota that is like quite far out. It's almost like a different city. And it's where a lot of kind of more of the poor people live, but also a lot of displaced people. Colombia has the highest or second highest internal displacement rate in the world. A lot of the people, are forced from their homes because of this violence, because of paramilitaries, because of the government. So a lot of them tend to live in that area, and places like Usme, Ciudad Bolívar, the populations tend to see where you see the most repression during things like the national strike. Like that's where, that was the most repression from police and things. So personally, when I was out there observing things, I didn't actually see anything happening. Didn't really hear about anything happening right in Usme, but something I definitely noticed was the very intense and heavy police presence. In the past couple of days in Bogota, I've definitely noticed a higher police and ESMAD presence, but today it's very, very strong. I saw videos from like friends and comrades of like ESMAD rolling in, which ESMAD, just quickly say again, it's like the riot police that actually came out of Plan Colombia. So it also came directly from like U.S. foreign policy and is responsible for killing, for torturing, for kidnapping a lot of people during protests. So yeah, there's like a heavy presence of there. Everyone I've spoken to from different parts of the city have like mentioned that they have seen, a lot of police and ESMAD presence, particularly in these poor kind of areas. And everyone is kind of thinking this means, that a lot of people think that the elections are going to get stolen. If that happens, Rodolfo wins, there's very much going to probably be some kind of reaction. So it seems people are, the police is like getting ready for that. Also on that note, this week in general, we've seen already kind of a reaction from the government and from the police. They have been arresting people from the Primera Línea, like the first line, who were very involved last year in the national strike, on the front lines, fighting in those strikes. So people, like leadership from these different groups have been arrested all over the country. The last number I heard was 57. This was on Friday. I'm not sure what the number is as of today. But this is like very much seen as like a deliberate political strategy because, if something happens, there might be like a social response. And those are the kinds of people that they don't want involved with that. So they're very much, arresting those people is kind of a very much political strategy. And yeah, having seen all the people out and all the police out, there's very much this fear that things might escalate later. Obviously, we still don't know. The polls are still open for 15 minutes. But this is very much what I'm hearing from different parts of the city, from different comrades, from other people around. So there's definitely a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. Obviously haven't nothing, there's still hope, but in terms of like US interest, the US and the West have so much interest in what happens in these elections. So things like stealing the elections is very much a very real possibility, and something we see happen constantly, not just in Colombia, in Latin America, all over the world, where, US imperialism and imperialism in general exists. So we're going to see, I'm keeping in contact with people, seeing what's happening, staying on the ground. But, some fraud things at elections. My friends did see some people inside look suspicious, and there was an idea that they may have been like undercover cops. They were speaking to other cops, smoking inside. But, us ourselves did not actually see anything happening there, just more so this very obvious police presence and a militarized response that is being to the elections. But I think now we're going to hear from Kathy, if they are ready, who is going to, continue. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Hey, Kathy, how are you
Hi,
doing?
James. I'm good. I'm actually outside of the polling sites right now, in Jackson Heights, Queens. My father is jurado, so we're waiting for him to come out. My mother just voted. All obviously Petristas, as any good progressive leftist. The first task is to radicalize your family. Que no me llame. Sorry.
Here we go.
So sorry about that. Yeah, and there's a lot of tension out here. I got into a few arguments. There was one big argument that I got into out here, just literally on the outside with some guy that's supporting Rodolfo, and he's like, the same age-old argument that we have deconstructed a million times, that about, oh, well, Colombia is gonna be like Venezuela and all of these things. And we were just debating that, and then one of the guys got like super aggressive, which is super in line with like this very right-wing type of personality. He ended up pushing his wife because his wife was trying to calm him down. And I was just like, this is exactly what we're fighting against, and it's like shown right here. You guys are fighting to like defend this hyper, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist country that has literally left the large majority of Colombians living in poverty, has these high numbers of femicide, these high numbers of internalized displacements, of deaths. And this is why we're fighting, and then of course that NYPD, the New York City Police, came to their rescue and had me escorted out, even though I'm in crutches right now. Because I have a torn calf muscle. But I was, of course, the police deemed that I was the aggressor in the situation and the person that they needed to take out of the situation. So right now I'm in the car. I'm waiting. My dad's helping count the votes right now. Outside we saw a few like right wingers, but for the large majority we saw people that were in support of Petro, and a lot of solidarity. When the guys started trying to come at me physically, there was a lot of solidarity from community out here in Jackson Heights, Queens, supporting not me but the message of Petro en Francia.
Well, before we go further, I want to just make sure everybody knows who you are. Kathy Rojas is a great friend, somebody I really respect a lot. But you work with Answer, and you were am I still here? Yeah. You're the Party of Socialism and Liberation candidate for mayor in the last election. And you are a citizen of two countries, or you come from, your heritage is from two countries and kind of two cities. You're Colombian, you are from the U.S., and you live in New York, but you have a very close tie to where I am here in Cali. And yeah, hearing you talk and make the connections. There's something that I don't know if you know about this, but just the connections between the U.S. policing style and the Colombian policing style. I somewhere in my research stumbled on these trips that the New York Police Department soccer team takes to Bogota some of the time, but that's
Yeah,
neither
I mean,
here.
we've known, the NYPD is, I think, the 11th largest army in the world at this point. I'm not sure where it's at like this year, but it's always very high up there. And we know that the U.S. military is, highly involved in training the Colombian military, but not only the Colombian military, but the high-ranking officers in the paramilitary, in the right-wing paramilitary forces that have been responsible for 80% of all disappearances and deaths in Colombia. So we know that there is a very, very strong tie both to training of how the U.S. trains its NYPD, but also how it trains a military and ESMAD in particular, right, in Colombia, right, and that it's very similar to how riot police are trained over here.
Well, you know about the ESMAD police, the U.S. funded and co-created riot police in Colombia,
Yes.
who have killed so many people, both in the cities and the countries. Their specialty is attacking protesters, and again, funded by the U.S. The two candidates have very different positions. Like Gustavo Petro was the only candidate who committed to dismantling ESMAD, and
Yes.
they have very different positions on the war and the civil war in Colombia and on the peace process. And what do you see for Colombia, whoever wins, in terms of the struggle in the streets and the peace process? Is it in danger, or is it something that will continue forward no matter who wins? Or
I think I'm very hopeful. I think, just speaking, I was in Colombia in April. I was in Cali. So for the large majority of people that I spoke to, they were committed to voting for Pedro and Francia, and it was a very strong commitment. And this was when Fico was like his number one opponent. Now it's Rodolfo, who is this kind of like almost I don't he's just so openly, so audacious with his right-wing tendencies. With literally the last week of his campaign, when he could have been out campaigning, talking to communities, trying to get votes, he was in Miami spending the time with sex workers on a boat, and
right.
and I think that Petro and Francia, they really took these last 2 weeks to constantly be in campaign, be in communities, talking to people. And I think honestly, when the first round finished, I was really nervous, because I was like, wow, like I don't know if we're gonna win it, even though we have the largest majority of votes for almost if all of the right wing unites, then they are going to, Rodolfo is going to win. But what I've seen a lot in conversations, and I've also been campaigning. I'm sorry. I'm so. Can you just give me 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. So for a lot of the time that we were doing like outreach, right? I've been doing outreach here in Jackson Heights, Queens, before my muscle tear. Going out in the streets and trying to sign people up for the elections to vote. They were still allowed to vote if they like subscribe to being like a juror. And we were out here also trying to get people to switch their votes, either from the people that are votando en blanco to switch them to Petro, or some people that are right wing but may not like Rodolfo. But we actually, you know, for a lot of people that I spoke to that were voting for Rodolfo, you know, they actually, after a conversation, they were able to commit to Petro, you know. And I've been having conversations, you know, I'm also a teacher. I work at a 100% immigrant school. And a lot of my students are from Colombia, and I've spoken to them about what their families, who they're going to vote for, and all of these things. And some of them even mentioned to me that their family voted for Rodolfo in the first round because he was kind of this like anti-state candidate. And then like once after the first round, after all of these things came out, him saying that he supports Hitler, him saying that women should stay home, the way that he's acted even this week, that has been completely and totally unprofessional, his corruption charges, how he's made money off the poor through these high interest rates, right? They've actually committed to voting for Petro, and they're now like committed to voting for Petro. So I mean, I don't know. I think I'm hopeful that Petro and Francia will win. But I think at the end of the day, whether they win or not, we know that the biggest, you know, that even if they win, the struggle doesn't end there, right? Because we have a whole government, a whole military, a whole like, you know, country full of police, of military, of people that, you know, of the elite that own most of the companies that create all of the goods, that are going to try to unite against him, right? And we've seen this already happen in Venezuela, right? So I think that it is that, you know, whether he wins or not, the struggle doesn't end there. But I am very, very, very worried about the livelihood of protesters if he does not win, right? Because I know that people will be taking the streets, and I know that Rodolfo may act in a manner that was even more cruel than the manner that Duque acted last year. And I fear that there's going to be a lot more people that are disappeared if he loses. But I'm hopeful that Petro and Francia, and I would like to add that Francia, you know, has really strengthened his campaign, right? Because she has a lot of solidarity, especially in New York City. She came to New York City to speak. A lot of people have a lot of love for her. She also has like such a clean record. She's literally a woman that has you know, worked in the mines, worked cleaning houses, a single mother, a young mother, and she has surpassed all these obstacles, not to turn into like this you know, a picture of you know, of one capitalist that made it and brought it up and brought herself up by the bootstraps. No, she decided not to do that, right? She like literally surpassed all these obstacles to commit to a life that was dedicated to her community and to ending all the types of oppressions that Afro-Colombians and all marginalized communities in Colombia are currently suffering. And I think that she is extremely honorable, and that she has helped Petro's campaign so much, and has you know, we have gained a lot of votes as well because of Francia.
And she's quite a contrast to Marlene Castillo, the vice president candidate for Hernandez. This about Hernandez, you brought up the Hitler statement. There's a few very strange statements he's made over the past campaign, including that he said, what here? The best business in the world is to have poor people who are consumers, because the poor consume all the silver. I don't know, they produce all the silver. But there's another thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because like when I was walking, you know, somebody over here, like because of the polling, so everybody's like yelling at me because of the shirt. It says Lucha como Francia Marquez. I actually created these to fundraise for different communities in Colombia to receive funds so that they could take caravans to their election polls. But because I'm wearing this shirt, you know, people will yell things at you. And one of the things that they yelled is like, oh, another one that doesn't want to work and just wants to live off the government. And, I had to turn around and tell him, you're the one that doesn't want to work. It is the rich that has literally created all their wealth off the backs of working class Colombians and has failed to give them any piece of the pie. Any piece of the pie. How is it that supposedly Colombia's economy is booming, right? And that you guys are, stacking up in money and wealth and houses, but the people that are creating all that wealth for you, that are breaking their backs, right, are living in poverty? How is that possible, right? And that's possible because you guys literally don't work, and you just benefit off the backs of working class people. So it's crazy that they even use this argument of like, well, you don't want to work. It's like, well, look at all the rich people. Look at Rodolfo. He's literally made money off giving people these mortgage interest rates that are way too high for them to even pay, and they live their whole life trying to pay off these mortgage interest rates, and then he tries to take their money, take their house when they can't pay, right? Like, that's not working. That's literally just collecting money from the poor. That is not honorable. That's not work. Like, we are actually the ones that are out there working every single day, and we are the ones that now are demanding for a piece of our pie, and we just have to fight this ultra right wing ideology in all its ways, because it's so backwards, and it needs to come to an end.
One of the things that amazes me, and I know you've seen this too with your years of interaction to Colombia, but is the degree to which the popular movements just keep getting stronger and stronger, and keep just not taking whatever's thrown after them. The repression in Cali and the national strike was over the top and brutal, but the people didn't back down, and they just won all kinds of victories. But one of the things I know is people here were so impressed by the uprising in the United States in 2020. George
Mm-hmm.
Floyd was killed, and it's you saw references to it all over the place, and all the graffiti, people just very, very aware of that, inspired. And I think people here really get the connection that the struggle, they talk about the struggle for the second independence, and that second independence is from the U.S. Domination and neoliberalism and all that. But I would just say, what, in your opinion, being in both countries as you've been, what are some of the lessons that we can bring home from the popular struggle in Colombia to the United States and apply there?
Well, for one thing that you mentioned was, the connection between all of these struggles, and I think that that's something, really moving and inspiring, right? At the end of the day, all of our struggles are connected. When working class people win in one country, they win in another, right? If we just take a look at at Colombia right now, right? With the war on drugs, right? The war on drugs that has been imposed by the United States. What is it doing in Colombia? It's funding. It was funding a civil war. It's been funding the use of glyphosate that has been giving our citizenry cancer. It's been funding paramilitarism that has been killing human rights defenders and labor rights defenders and protesters. It created SMAD. All of these things came out of the war on drugs, right? And then the war on drugs in the United States, what has it created? It has created the mass incarceration of Black and Latino people. It has criminalized, all of our lives, right? It has separated families. It has caused the deportation, right? We have people that have faced deportation in this country because of the fact that they may have been found with, a little bit of marijuana. So it is breaking apart families, breaking lives, right? And putting people in a cycle of poverty within the United States. It has sent people to prison so that they could work as slaves where they're not paid, so that they can make big bucks for large corporations like Johnson and Johnson, like Victoria's Secret, and all of these corporations that use prison labor, right? So when Colombia wins, right, and Colombia says, we're not going to allow this exploit like this type of exploitation and imperialism from the United States, and therefore we end the war on drugs, we win in the United States as people of color as well. So I just really want to make that connection that we all win, right? And it's the same thing even if we look at Palestine, right? When Palestine wins, Colombia wins, right? A lot of the bullets that are being used in Colombia during the national strike were coming from Israel, right? So we see those connections, right? Those worldwide connections as oppressed peoples that we need to come together because it is one struggle. In terms of the lessons that we could take from the Colombian people, I think the number one lesson is to have heart. You know, I don't know. To me, is to have heart and courage. You know, to have love for your people, because above anything else, because no matter what, in the United States they'll use all the types of fear tactics, and people are scared of losing their job. People are scared of getting sprayed, getting shot by rubber bullets, all of these things. And at some point we have to say that our livelihood, that our future is more important than these material things that we have right now, and that we have to put the love for our people, the love for humanity above all else at the moment. And that is how we're going to win.
Well, thank you very much for making those connections and leaving us with those inspiring words. It's always, always, always good to talk to you. We think of the world of Kathy Rojas at the Alliance for Global Justice. I'll go on the record with that.
Thank you, James, for having me and all the amazing work that you do for Colombia. Really, it's I love the Alliance for Global Justice, and I thank you so much, because it's easy to do humanitarianism, volunteerism, taking people to Colombia just to volunteer. But what you do is you really entrench United States citizens in what it's like to be an activist in Colombia, so that it keeps our struggle alive in the United States, so that there's solidarity, so that people, I mean, even though, a lot of the fundraising that we've been able to do, it's been because the conversation on the struggle in Colombia has stayed alive because of the Alliance for Global Justice. So thank you so much for all the work that you guys do.
Well, thank you, and I'm sure we'll both be keeping at it.
Yes.
I hope to see you live soon, but it's good to talk to you now. Kathy's a good friend. She's been on our delegations before and helped us out a lot. Anyway, we are going to go to some live reports. We're going to go to our team in Cali right now. We have Daniela, Aminta, and Raquel standing by, along with their friends, our comrades from the Francisco Fuentes Human Rights Network. Oh my goodness, but you guys, you're sideways. Your video is sideways. Turn the phone.
I gotta hear. I have to hear. I'm not hearing anything.
Not hearing them well. Hello, colleague crew. Okay, well, let's talk just a little bit about this issue of while we're waiting for them to get set up. I want to talk a little bit about this whole thing about planned democracy. Again, planned democracy, it's a planned mockery of democracy. I think that it's very safe to call it that. But it really doesn't look, they say that they're out to protect democracy, but it really seems to be more like a preemptive coup. We wrote about that recently. But 2 days ago, the police, well, 3 days ago, the director general of the national police went forward and said they had all this information about planned violence to disrupt the elections, and they gave no proof, no tests, nothing like that. But then they said they're going to do these sweeps, arresting people that had been frontline activists, young people that had been frontline activists during the national strike of last year, 2021. And the next day they went out and arrested 30 people. I think Shanti was saying it's up to 57 now. No, they arrested 26 people the next day, but apparently that's just about doubled. But the arrests at that time were concentrated in Bucaramanga with 12 young people arrested, 9 in Cali and 5 in Bogota. And right now, there's a hunger strike on the part of the detainees in Cali who are demanding to be released. And I want you to know that you can go to afgj.org and you can scroll down. It's still on the front page, but the article about the preemptive strike, you can look at the article about Roger Waters' video, but there's a link to an action you can take to send an email to the authorities to demand the freedom of these young people. But I would just, before I transition from that, I want to read something. We have been working with the Permanent Committee for Human Rights, or CPDH, CPDH. Everybody calls them CPDH. But I just want to read a statement by Rubiel Vargas, who is the head of CPDH nationally. All this is against the movement backing the Pacto Histórico. The detentions are all of young people who participated in social protests, what are called the primera línea, or front line. This so-called planned democracy is a plan to pressure and intimidate. The majority supporting Petro are young people. These are the targets of the plan. As for the armed persons who assaulted participants in the national strike, none of them have been detained, because these are the ones called the good people. The good people are people in some way or another share the thinking of paramilitaries, even narco traffickers. Side by side with the public forces, there are videos, photos of them firing on protesters. These come from many protests, and these attacks left many people dead. The ones who committed these homicides are not arrested. On the other hand, the young people protesting against neoliberal economics, against the entire system, these are the only ones who are detained. They are also mostly Petro supporters. Planned democracy is a plan to promote fear, in the sense that if Petro does not win and people protest, there will be violent acts against Petro supporters and protesters, and they will blame the young people instead of those who are really assaulting the people. And wow, that's a good thing for us to hear. I wish we have a Rubiel. We might be talking to him live later. But those words are really prescient, and they're what we're thinking now, because the polls have just closed. They closed 13 minutes ago. So voting is done in Colombia. Now we're waiting for the results, and people are really wondering what's going to happen, what those results are going to be. Are they going to be honest, open, fair results? The indications so far do not look good for that, but we will see what will be the outturn. If could Petro actually win with anything other than a large victory? I don't know. Will Rodolfo Hernandez be the next president? The surveys beforehand have showed things neck and neck. We just don't know. But we do know that whatever happens, if there is fraud, if people are angry in the streets, this so-called planned democracy is already in place. The plans for repression are in place, and those plans are funded by the US, and young people are already going to jail. So go to afgj.org, look at our recent pieces, and take action. Are we ready with any of the live reports?
Okay, hi, hello everyone. Buenos días, buenas tardes. Estamos aquí
Well, you all are not very far away.
In English, sorry, I'm speaking in Spanish all day. Hi everyone, we're here in Cali, Colombia, in Valle del Cauca. Some of us have been here all day. A few of us have been up in north of Cauca. Then we crossed the border between the states to go up to the area where the national or the election observation mission had declined, had withdrawn their certification for observers to attend there based on too high a risk to dangerous possibilities happening to observers, which of course we found very discomforting, because if observers can't be there, how is this a safe place for people to carry out free and fair elections for the people who are there themselves? So of course we followed through with our commitment to go up, myself and Aminta, our colleague here Carlos on the camera, and we were able to go up last night to a zona campesina, reserva campesina, farmers reserve zone. And this is a place that's like a collective cooperative type of a farming area, special designation in Colombia to protect some of the territories for the campesino culture, which is in urgent need of being identified as a very particular culture with very particular needs, and also with particular attacks on their human rights. So we were up there last night talking with people about how they were feeling about the elections. There's a lot of concern in this area because in the last several months there have been several assassinations of people close to them, of people in the community. And this is obviously a huge intimidation factor, besides the fact that these people are trying to survive in an environment where they were made promises based on the peace accords that have not been kept by the state, by the government. So right now it's a very tense situation there. I want to give time for the others to speak again, but we were able to go to support and accompany the reincorporated ex-guerrilla, the signers of the peace accord. In that particular area, there's a smaller zone where some of them are staying and working on productive projects and finding ways they are re-entering Colombian society without help from the state, as was promised to them when they signed the peace accords and laid down arms. So we accompanied them to the polls, watched them exercise their right to vote, and were able to then move on into some of the other towns up there where, as we traveled, we noticed a lot of graffiti from our different armed actors and groups. In that particular area, there was a lot of support for the Pacto Histórico visibly, and not as much did we see for the right-wing candidate, Rodolfo Hernandez. But we did see people in the areas where the MOE had asked us not to go, for example, Caloto. We found people very lively in the streets, in calm state, exercising their right to vote. And we did notice, though, and maybe I'll let Aminta talk about that, about the Punto Negro, So I'll thank you everyone for being here. We're very excited because the results are going to start coming in any time now, so we don't want to take too much time here, but we do want to share a moment with you from our experience also, those that were smiling all day.
Sure thing, and obviously in Colombia we did see huge indiscrepancies and evidence of voter fraud, not only there but also in the city of Corinto. Particularly, there was an area when you were able to vote that was designated for a blank vote, right? And there was instances, evidence that there was black ink, very small, and yet that small dot of ink was enough for it to count as a blank vote, completely voiding the citizens' choice. And obviously, knowing that Cauca is one of the regions with the highest amount of voter intimidation, fraud. Also this morning in the region of Cauca, we had two organizers, human rights activists, who were assassinated. And so this obviously contextualizes the immense threat and fear that is present within these regions. And like Raquel previously stated, in many ways it was very crucial for there to be international observers present, because this is such a highly contested area, because there is a legacy of inconsistencies. One thing that I want to really highlight, and I want viewers to understand too, is that in these rural areas, just as in urban areas, right, there are particular instances, conditions that we need to be taking account for. And obviously here, so much of this fraud and violence is also perpetuated by the legacy of multinational companies, companies that are pushing on monocultures, such as in the region where we were at, lots of sugarcane production. And so this not only violates the land, but in many ways also violates and disrespects the actual peasant farmer. For many peasant farmers, a Petro presidency will allow for them to have access, mobility, in order to fight for agrarian land reform, to be able to ensure that they can fight for food sovereignty. One thing that really stood out as I was talking with Lay there, a campesino organizer where we were staying last night, was the importance of having peasant farmers, campesinos, recognized by the census to be incorporated on an institutional level. And this is important because it takes into account what are the specific challenges that peasant farming communities face today. For example, not only do we have the threat of multinationals, but we also have the threat of land redistribution. We also have the threat, obviously, of narco trafficking in these areas. All of these things, I want to really stress, are connected to U.S. imperialism. They are connected to those who are operating finance capital, and those that are most directly impacted are these peasant farmers. So a Petro presidency would be able to establish more flexibility and mobility for these people. So as we see the results coming in now, I want us to also keep that perspective in mind. I'll go ahead and pass it off to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Misa. And hi, everybody. We were here in Cali today, complimenting the efforts of Raquel and Amita and everybody else who is in the countryside. I also want to take a moment to just introduce our compas who are here from RSVP. They have been accompanying us today and do human rights work here in this area. I think one thing that I'll touch on, I completely just want to reiterate everything that we've heard from the support that we've seen in the streets for a Petro presidency, as well as just the sheer volume of folks who have been coming out to vote. We have heard from observers as well as witnesses at the polling sites that this round of voting has been busier than even the last round. So there has been a lot of movement all day and a lot of excitement. Folks are out on the street ready to celebrate. And at the same time, as election results begin to come in, there is such a looming threat of what is going to happen. There is such tangible trauma in the area, and everybody here of the state response that we saw 1 year ago during El Paro Nacional, and just the level of violence. And as results are coming, and now we are preparing to go and be with community as we respond to just whatever may happen. The police presence has been really strong, especially in the areas where a lot of the folks here have been fighting on the ground, and specifically last year. And so there's a bittersweet feeling. There's a lot of excitement, but the looming threat of both fraud that Amita was speaking on, as well as just state-based response and the level of police presence in the city has been really strong.
I want to say we have Darnay Rodriguez there with us from RSVP, from the Francisco Isaias Cifuentes. Hola, Darnay, Human Rights Network. But Darnay just sent us a report that, first of all, 417 with 114,697 votes counted. The official count at that time was Rodolfo Hernandez and Marilene Castillo leading by 56.24% of the vote versus 41.91% for Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez. Meanwhile, a few minutes later at 421 with 213,533, the Hernandez lead had shrunk with 49.93% of the vote versus 48.08% for Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez. So that's the latest figures we have. I want to remind people that if the second round or other rounds that we've observed are any indication, the results will come in very quickly rather than later. So stay tuned. And I don't know, would someone, perhaps we should jump, by the way, the mic you have is not working very well. It's very scratchy. It would be good to get an interview with Darne with some translation, but I don't know. Do we have anyone ready to roll from the other teams? I guess we're ready for live in Zipaquirá, the beautiful town of Zipaquirá, with Christina y Edwa. Hi, Christina.
Hello.
You hear me?
Hello, James. How are you doing?
How are things? Oh, I'm doing well. How about yourself? Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and where you're from and what you're doing in Zipaquirá.
Hi, everybody. We're here in Zipaquirá, Cundinamarca. That's a couple of hours from the capital, Bogotá. And I am Christina from Denmark, anthropologist and political activist. And I form part of various groups in solidarity with Colombia in my country, with the people, the Colombian diaspora over in Denmark. And I'm here with my guy, Edward.
Hi guys,
who is Colombian. Edward, he's been helping me.
Situation right now. Yeah. Hi, it's me, it's Eddie, the boyfriend Christina. Here we are, looking what's going on in this area. Is really interesting because, yeah.
So you're actually there at the polls as the polls are closing.
We are right now. I don't know if I can turn over the camera, but we're here like in a long queue of people that have the votes in their hands. They're about to give over the votes. They have the votes of the people in these blue bags. And everyone is very excited to get out of here. Everyone is very tired. So people are actually running to go and deliver the votes. You can see one of the blue bags here. Full of the votes of the people, the future of the country. Gracias. And well, we're seeing it's very difficult to know what's going on. The bunks of the votes are very equal. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. We've been talking to a lot of people in the streets. We were also in Nemocon, that's half an hour from here. And almost everyone we talked to on the streets were voting for Petro. And we talked to people randomly, old people, young people, women, men, groups of people, people that came alone. And everyone voted for Petro and expressed that they really wanted a change in this country. But yeah, then in the bus from Nemocon to here, I met a guy who works in a field, and he voted for Rodolfo. And he told me, well, a lot of the same, that he wants a change. And well, the candidates that they vote for, that they didn't vote for, they have like this, oh, they're not adequate. They're going to make the country into a very bad place. And that's why I voted for the candidate I voted for. And we had some people who didn't want to talk to us either, which was fine, of course. The rest of the people, the personnel, have been very nice with us. They have let us come in and see the whole process. We had a little incident in Nemocon where a woman said that her vote wasn't signed, but by the juror. But we asked the registrar of the place, and he told us that the vote will still be valid as long as it's in the ballot. And here they have told us the same. And other than that, well, yeah, excited to see the results. Everyone is very unsure. The people that told us that they vote for Petro, they are scared that the elections will be crooked. This is an area of a lot of, people work in farms, a lot of workers. And we heard rumors that these people are told to vote for a certain candidate, most likely Rodolfo, in order to not lose their jobs. And we had several people in Nemocon that didn't want to talk to us. As soon as we said who we are, they didn't want to talk to us. And Edward, who's from here, he's from Nemocon. His suspicion was that it was the people voting for Rodolfo. So, and why wouldn't they tell us? Why wouldn't they be like, because it was a very big difference like between people who were completely closed off and the people that voted for Petro, who would proudly talk to us. They let us film. So that seems a little bit weird. And that could be a confirmation of these suspicions. So yeah, but else than that, we've been talking to the CNE and the Registradura, and everyone says that the process has been fine. It's been very fluent. Everything's been in order. We talked to the jurors. They have received the ballots that they were supposed to receive. It has been more or less the same people, the same amount of people voting as it was for the last elections in these areas. We've seen more men than women, I feel. And well, yeah.
Well,
That's a
very
quick update here
interesting.
from Cundinamarca.
I think, well, you make a good point too. I mean, one thing about this election, however it does turn out, I think that it can be said that there's been, there's definitely a backlash against the status quo. That is very clear.
Totally.
And yeah.
Everyone agrees on that.
But,
yeah. We had a yeah. Sorry.
Well,
We had a little bit of a weird experience with a woman from. This is so hard for me to say. La Procuraduría, la Procuradora. I don't know how you say this in English.
The like a attorney.
Yeah, she says she has power like on the municipal level. And she was going to various points, and she was very interested in hearing who we were, where we were from, to get all our contacts. She told us proudly that she was going to vote for Rodolfo, and she held us on like for a long time, talking about her personal life. She started showing us videos of her family, their trip to Mexico, drinking tequila, and she showed us pictures of her house. She invited us to her house, and well, you could see she was she had a lot of money. She had several cars, a big house. Her kids have studied in Europe. Yeah, and obviously, if you're Colombian and you're able to take a trip with the whole family to Mexico, you're in a pretty privileged position. So yeah, she was like, Rodolfo's going to be good for the economy, and she was following us a little bit around and like taking our time away from talking to the people. So that was a little suspicious, and she wanted to drive us around, and I was like evading her and saying, hey, I have to follow orders, we have a plan, we have an agenda, because she wanted to be like with us the whole day. So so yeah, that was a little weird. We felt a little hijacked by her. Oh, now I don't hear you, James. I think I might have lost you. Oh, now you're back.
Tienes que estar organizando la gente un poquito porque estaban haciendo.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you now, James. I don't know if it's my. I can't hear you.
Bueno, mi nombre es Leider Valencia, hago parte de la Asociación Campesina del municipio de Miranda, y pues la lucha que hemos venido ejerciendo nosotros como campesinos es ante la institucionalidad del reconocimiento del campesino como sujeto de derechos. Hemos ganado algunas sentencias, pero ha sido en base a la lucha, a las movilizaciones, a los paros. Eso nos ha llevado también a hacer exigencia al Censo Nacional del DANE, porque tampoco aparecemos nosotros reconocidos como campesinos. Esa es la lucha que hemos empezado y seguiremos bajo ese proceso. Ahora, en este momento coyuntural que estamos de elecciones presidenciales, pues tenemos una gran oportunidad de apostarle a un cambio, de ese cambio que el pueblo colombiano y más aún los campesinos hemos anhelado, de que verdaderamente se cumpla la Constitución y que se cumplan los derechos que tenemos como campesinos y por ser ciudadanos, de que se refleje ese cambio en nuestros territorios, esas mejores condiciones de vida, esas transformaciones que queremos hacer, no solamente para el campo, sino que también para todo el país. En base a las elecciones presidenciales, pues tenemos muchas expectativas de que quede una persona que verdaderamente conozca las necesidades del pueblo y que verdaderamente tenga esa voluntad de trabajar para un pueblo en bien de todo el país.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me now? Yep, okay, good. I don't know what the technical difficulty was there, but we are back. And again, polls have closed. They've been closed for 35 minutes, except for people who are standing in line with ballot in hand. And we are expecting results back soon. And I guess right now we are going to go to Mexico. We're speaking with Daniela Gonzalez, who is the coordinator for the People's Human Rights Observatory. Buenas tardes, Daniela, ¿cómo estás?
Buenas tardes, James. ¿Sí me escuchas bien?
Sí, espera un momento. Tenemos interpretación, ¿sí? Consecutivo. Okay. Tanya, can we hear you?
You hear me?
Okay, here we are.
Yep. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hola, Tania.
Hola, Daniela.
Muchos saludos.
Saludos a ti.
Well, how are things? You're calling in from Oaxaca, Mexico, correct?
Estás hablando desde de Oaxaca o la Ciudad de México, ¿no?
Estoy desde la Ciudad de México.
Yes, she's from in the Mexico City.
Ujú.
And so, Daniela, first of all, can you just tell us, you're the coordinator of the People's Human Rights Observatory, Observatorio por los Derechos Humanos de los Pueblos. And before you continue, can you tell us just a little bit about the Observatorio, what it is, who makes it up, who's part of it?
¿Nos puedes decir un poco de tu organización, de qué es el Observatorio de Derechos Humanos?
Así es como ya lo dijo James, soy la coordinadora internacional del Observatorio de Derechos Humanos de los Pueblos.
Yeah, so she's the coordinator for the Observatory for Human Rights.
Que es una organización que nacemos en el año del 2016 en el estado de Oaxaca y estamos conformados por 16 países, fundamentalmente de América Latina. Está también España, Suiza, Estados Unidos y Palestina.
So yeah, she's from this organization was started in 2016 in the state of Oaxaca. It's been it consists of 19 countries, fundamentally in Latin America, but they also exist in Spain, and they have connections with Spain, Sweden, yeah, and the United States.
Y nuestra organización ha tenido diferentes organizaciones hermanas que son fundadores, como la Alianza por la Justicia Global y otras organizaciones que hacen parte del observatorio. Y fundamentalmente uno de los objetivos que tenemos desde el observatorio es dar acompañamiento a las justas luchas que están dando diferentes pueblos en diversos territorios en el mundo.
Yeah, so there's also other sister organizations involved with the Derechos Observatory, including the Global Justice Center, the Alliance for Global Justice, and others. And really, one of the main goals for the organization is to accompany people in their social struggles and the social movements happening around the world.
Can I just interrupt very quickly? We've gotten new vote results with 3,065,094 votes counted. That's 34.43% of the tables coming in. Petro and Marcos have taken the lead against Hernandez and Concio, and right now have 50.29% of the vote versus 47.48% for Hernandez.
So, ahorita con las votaciones que están entrando, se ve que Petro y Márquez están ahorita ganando y tienen 50% de la votación. ¿Es correcto, James? No
Yes.
agarré los números
Sí,
correcto, pero
sí es
sí,
correcto.
entonces
Es
ahí está.
50.29%,
Sí.
la cifra exacta, sí.
Well, Daniela, as a leader of an international solidarity organization, an organization that is anti-imperialist, against neoliberalism, and for people's power, and as a Mexican, can you tell me a little bit? I've so many times heard you say that the peace of Colombia is the peace of the world. How is that true for you as a Mexican, for a Latin American, and as a citizen of the world? Why does Colombia matter to the rest of us?
Entonces, Daniela, tú como parte de una organización que es antiimperialista, en contra del neoliberalismo y por pues poder popular, y también como mexicana, tú siempre has dicho que la paz de Colombia es la paz de todo el mundo. Entonces, ¿pudieras hablar sobre por qué esa es la verdad para ti como mexicana?
Sí, es muy importante y definitivamente Colombia es un territorio que es fundamental para lograr la liberación de todos los pueblos de nuestro continente, de nuestra región. Porque bien sabemos los vínculos tan fuertes que tienen y han tenido los gobiernos colombianos con el imperialismo, con los Estados Unidos. Por lo tanto, cuando logremos que se haga efectiva la liberación de Colombia, pues vamos a lograr una verdadera paz, como lo hemos dicho, no tan solo para Colombia, sino para todos los pueblos del mundo. Entonces, por eso Colombia es fundamental, porque, como ya lo has dicho, James, sabemos muy bien cómo estos vínculos han sido históricos y han sido en contra de toda la región. Todo el financiamiento de los Estados Unidos que ha inyectado a Colombia y que incluso sabemos bien toda esta conexión que tienen con pues los grupos represores, que tiene que ver con el ESMAD, tiene que ver también con el modelo carcelario, y esto se reproduce pues en la constante y brutal represión a los líderes, lideresas, defensores y defensoras de derechos humanos. Por eso es de que estamos en una hermandad y una constante solidaridad con el heroico pueblo de Colombia, porque bien sabemos que dan una lucha muy importante para lograr una verdadera paz con justicia y en contra de todo este modelo de muerte que el imperialismo quiere imponer.
Yeah, so as you said, as Daniela saying that Colombia is very important as a territory to reach liberation, because as we know, the Colombian governments over the years historically has had connections with U.S. imperialism, and this has resulted in Colombia essentially being a colony in a way of U.S. and a lot of impoverishment being imposed there, violence, and so making these connections and really fighting for these struggles is essential for the liberation of the continent, for the world, especially as we see other repressive agencies collaborating with the U.S. government and the transnational organizations or paramilitary groups or groups like ESMAD. So this manifests against violence against the people, against social leaders who are fighting in this struggle against for peace, and fighting against this model of death that imperialism imposes. So that's why we're in solidarity with the Colombian people, because they are fighting a very real struggle that affects all of us.
And just before we go, I know there were a team of observers from the observatory that were at the Colombian consulate in Mexico City. Any reports of note to make about their observation?
Sabemos que había unos observadores en el consulado de la Ciudad de México y tienes unos reportes sobre eso, ¿qué pasó? ¿O cómo se ven las cosas?
Así es, pues decirles que desde el día lunes, el lunes que fue, desde el lunes 13, se instalaron las mesas del lunes 13 al viernes 17 en el consulado de Colombia en la Ciudad de México. Y bueno, hubo una participación activa, pero a partir del día de ayer, a partir del 18 y hoy 19, se tomó la decisión porque se instalaron 15 mesas, entonces no iba a ser suficiente el espacio en el consulado, entonces se tuvo que trasladar toda la infraestructura y demás en el Hotel Sheraton de la Ciudad de México y en el Hotel María Isabel Sheraton, que está en Paseo de la Reforma, y ahí se instalaron desde todo el día de ayer y el día de hoy, todo el día de hoy ya se cerraron las votaciones en donde se instalaron esas 15 mesas. Afortunadamente ahí tenemos una participación muy activa tanto del Observatorio de Derechos Humanos de los Pueblos, compañeras y compañeros que pues hemos estado ahí durante toda la semana y por supuesto el día de hoy en el cierre, con otras organizaciones hermanas como Colombianos y Colombianas por la Paz, Colpaz, entre otras organizaciones que también pues inscribieron observadores y observadoras. Hasta el momento, todo el día de hoy, hubo una participación activa de colombianas y colombianos. No se han encontrado hasta el momento, digamos, ninguna cuestión fuera de la normatividad. Todo ha estado, digamos, en regla y pues ahí seguimos con nuestras compañeras y compañeros que van a estar hasta que se hagan el conteo y van a estar hasta que sea ya el cierre total. Ahora, pues ya se cerraron, como les decía, las mesas, pero vamos a estar ahí en la constante observancia hasta que ya se tengan los resultados finales. Creemos que ha sido, pues también algo histórico, porque normalmente no había, digamos, una participación tan activa de las y los colombianos y por eso decimos que también ha sido muy importante estos días porque sí ha habido una participación muy activa.
Okay, so since Monday, the 13th, there was polling places established in different hotel areas in Mexico City and Hotel Sheraton, as Daniela said, and there were 15 seats established during that time. People who have been observing have been there through that whole time, observing. Different organizations, including Colombians for Peace, have been there, part of the observation. And since Monday, there's been a very active participation, including there's been, a historic participation from Colombians that hasn't been seen before. And like Daniela said, it's been really active these last few days, and there hasn't really been no irregularities have been seen through that process, but the people observing remain there until all the voting is done, and they'll continue to be there during that time.
Ok, Daniela, siempre es muy bueno verte y vamos a hablar contigo más porque somos camaradas. Y vamos
Claro
a
que sí.
continuar. Este es un día muy cercano a nuestros corazones, yo sé.
Así es, y estamos pues muy atentas y atentos y bueno, como todas y todos queremos obviamente que haya un verdadero respeto de el pueblo y el sentimiento del pueblo de Colombia y sobre todo que se respete el voto de la ciudadanía en general en Colombia y por eso es que pues estamos pues en todos los lugares en observancia constante y sobre todo para pues estar también cuidando, ¿no? Que haya un respeto hacia esa ciudadanía, hacia todo el pueblo de Colombia y pues como ya bien lo decías, este es un día histórico que nos llega pues en nuestros corazones y pues estamos presentes y pues en cualquier momento que sea necesario, pues vamos a seguir aquí, vamos a estar también pues muy pendientes de toda la información que nos estén dando nuestros compañeros y compañeras. También por acá está el compañero Eduardo Correa, ya nos mandaron también las fotos, las vamos a compartir y pues les abrazamos muy fuertemente y pues vamos a estar muy atentas a todo lo que suceda hoy en Colombia. Y vamos a seguir siempre en solidaridad. Eso lo tenemos bien claro. Un abrazo grande.
What did we just say? I forgot.
Oh, well, she was just saying how, she hopes the voice of the people are respected, that their vote is respected, and, they'll continue being there on alert to make sure that is what happens. And, there's democracy and respect for the people and what they choose today. It's a very historic day, and they'll be there with whatever is necessary. And she's sending us hugs, a very strong hug.
Okay, and now with 65.23% of the vote, we are seeing 51.03% for Petro, 46.74% for Hernandez.
Okay, do you want me to say?
There you go.
Sí, entonces
Sure.
ahorita estamos viendo un 51% por Petro y 46.74 por Rodolfo.
Okay, very interesting night. We're all on the edge of our chairs. I know I am, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think now we're going to, are we ready with Nina in Miranda?
Alrighty.
Yes.
Hey.
Yes, we are. Nina and Milan.
How are you all doing?
Quite good. We greet you from Potrerito, which is in the mountain range close to Miranda, and Miranda is located like 2 hours from Cali, so you know more or less where it's located. And we feel slowly but surely that people are getting more like excited because they are also following here on the TV screen right there the election results, and people in the vast majority voted for Petro here. We have been just behind us. You can see the, I don't know what's called in English, electoral station, yeah. And yeah, it was pretty clear results. But we're also an indigenous community, so like you see around us, maybe puedes como girar un poco para que vean.
Well, you all have just, did we lose you? Are you there?
Blue Vests, those are the indigenous guards who are also like following the elections and making sure that everybody can vote and get or organizing transportation so they can go to the, and make use of the right to vote.
Yeah,
Janina?
and it has been very beautiful to see like the effort of social organization. There's a lot of
yeah, just keep talking.
Yeah, like we see a very, very high participation, electoral participation, and people are telling us actually that the participation is higher than in the first round. And that is especially because the Indigenous Peoples Council have organized to provide food for everybody who comes to vote, everybody, whatever they vote, and they have provided also transport for the people who live further up in the mountain. So it has been very, very beautiful to see.
I don't know if you know this. This just reminds me of being, talking about U.S. democracy. There are states that are passing laws now that make it illegal to pass out food or water to people standing in line to vote in the U.S. I just thought I would throw that in there. So you all have had a pretty interesting and exciting trip. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you did today? Like you've been traveling around several places, right? And done some accompaniment?
We visited a farm, a peasant community, a collective project of farming near Miranda, the municipal capital. And today we have visited 3 voting polls in the countryside, in the mountains, like very far away. But in all of them, they have received us very well and have been very calm. Also, Miranda is really a harsh conflict zone historically, but also today, all the legal armed groups are present. We have seen a lot of killing of social leaders. Just last week, Ernesto Kunda was killed here in Miranda, and also in Cauca, we know that 2 witnesses from Pacto Histórico have been killed this morning. So people have been touched, have been impacted.
Hey, I think I may have to interrupt you for a minute. I'm hearing that that Petro has won.
Okay, that's all. Say it's so
That's
far.
the most important thing. Woo, woo, woo.
I just want to, that I'm hearing that several places, 79.63% of the votes counted. Petro is winning with 51.07%. I see that Nina and Milan just gave each other a hug. Can we confirm that this is actually true? It is true. They did give each other a hug.
Not the first time.
What are you hearing? You're hearing that that he's won, or
That was more or less what we had to say. That's a really, and I think you should just go to the studio.
Oh. Okay, I would like to. Any other confirmations about this? What are we getting? I'm looking at a couple different sources, and anyway, let's.
Es que estamos directo todavía.
Yeah, James.
Going. I am hearing several other places. I'm hearing with several other people are claiming the victory. I'm looking at several lists, several different sources. They're all claiming a lead. They're all claiming a victory. Now we're seeing 89.35% of the vote is Pacto Histórico winning with 50.88% of the vote. Hey, I wonder if we could get some of the people we talked about calling, and maybe I don't know if we'd be able to get through to Tom Burke, who's lined up, Ben Norton, Cristobal Cuamanga. I would like to get some Lorena. It'd be great to hear from some Colombians. I don't know if Cristobal or Lorena are available, or Hector Carabali. Anyway, you'll have a list of the phone numbers. Let's. I'd like to get some reactions, but I'll go ahead and get my own reaction. Well, I mean, it looks like Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez have won. 89.35% of the vote counted, 50.88%. That still seems awful close. I'm looking at several resources. El Tiempo has not yet. Yes, El Tiempo has called it. Elections 22, according to the pre-count, Petro is virtually the president of Colombia. So let's talk about that, what that means. And I would like to get some of those people on there, if we can get some of the background people. If you can give Tom a call, Cristobal, we're going to need interpretation. Darnay, if we could get her. Ben Norton, I know these are some of the people we talked about. Cristobal, again, would be great. But I think what does this mean? Well, what this means is that for the first time in the history of Colombia, a center-left president has been elected. And the makeup of the Congress, well, it's not going to be a piece of cake for Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez. The Congress, the Pacto Histórico, his party, is the largest bloc in the Senate and the second largest bloc in the House. I hope I don't have that backwards. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. The Liberal Party, on the other hand, is the second largest in the Senate and the first largest in the House. And the Liberal Party is pretty unpredictable. You can count on the Liberal Party to stand with the oligarchy generally, but well, not generally, all the time. But they do have their own left wing and their own right wing. And there is the Green Party, which in Colombia is a centrist party. A lot depends on the individual. There's the Comunes, have 10 people in the Congress. It's going to be an interesting makeup. And this Congress could make life very difficult or make life very easy for Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez. But I can tell you right now, there are a lot of people celebrating in the streets. Maybe I don't know if we can get some of the live people, and I'm sure people would like to see the reactions going on in the streets. But I'll continue on. One thing we know about Petro, he has said that he favors getting rid of the hated ESMAD riot police, who the Colombian National Police and ESMAD killed 13 people in one day. 14 people in one day on September 9th, 2020, in a brutal crackdown on protests against police brutality. And this ESMAD was created with U.S. funding. It's a darling of the U.S., part of the Plan Colombia. And he has said that he would shut them down, dismantle them. Will that be true? Let's wait and see. Petro has a history of a strong commitment to the peace process in Colombia, and his victory, if this is really a victory, this breathes new life into the peace process. But again, it's not going to be easy because the right wing in Colombia is brutal and well organized, and they're sure that they will do everything they can legally and illegally to make this new government unable to move. However, there is a power stronger than all others, and that in Colombia, that is the power of the people. It is a powerful bloc that cannot be held back. That's what we're seeing in two national strikes, what we're seeing today. And here we have our good friends, Jesus Rodriguez of the Orinoco Tribune and Ben Norton. Jesus, can you introduce Ben?
Of course, everyone knows Ben.
Yes, we know Ben, but I'm going to let you introduce him because I don't know him
Ben
personally.
Norton is a journalist. He is the head right now of multipolarista.com, a very good website with information in Spanish and English about the region and about the world in general. And he's currently based in Nicaragua, I believe. How are you, Ben?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I don't hear you.
I'm good. Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Excellent. Well, I think the news is pretty reassuring. I'm happy to see that for the first time in Colombia there will be a left-wing government. Now, the question is, will Gustavo Petro be allowed to govern? I think that's the question we should be discussing today, because Colombia is not a democracy, and the people have clearly voted for the left, but whether or not the Colombian oligarchy and the Colombian deep state, the security services, will allow Petro to govern is I think what we should be discussing today.
Yes, that's true. And here in Venezuela, there's always a lot of people worry about the possible assassination plans against Petro during the campaign. Now, if he wins, as the numbers are showing, I believe that the right wingers in Colombia, the oligarchy that has been ruling that country for centuries, are going to try to do anything to forbid a deep change in Colombia. That's another discussion also, how willing Petro is to, promote a deep change in Colombia. But one have to take into consideration that the U.S. have a lot of interest there, and they won't let that thing go very easy.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and we should be clear also that Petro ran a campaign being very clear that he was not going to go too far, that he would not challenge the U.S. too much. Of course, we've seen that he made a lot of very regrettable statements about Venezuela, about Cuba and Nicaragua. Of course, that's expected in the context of Colombian politics, but of course, he is not necessarily going to become an ally of Maduro and an ally of Cuba. That said, I think it should also be recognized that this is the end of Juan Guaido. I mean, the U.S. government still claims to recognize Guaido. The State Department and Antony Blinken just released a statement a few days ago claiming that, Guaido was attacked and this is supposedly an attack on democracy or something. They're going to have to end this farce pretty soon because they now lost their most important ally, which is, of course, a neighbor of Venezuela. And let's not forget that Colombia has played a role in numerous cross-border attacks on Venezuela, including Operation Gideon, the failed invasion, but other attacks as well. And despite the fact that Petro did run a campaign making sure to criticize Venezuela, he also made it clear that he's going to recognize the real government of Venezuela and normalize relations. And Francia Marquez as well, the vice presidential candidate who's going to be vice president very likely, she has also made it clear that they're going to normalize relations with Venezuela, which will also help to help solve the immigration and refugee problem and boost the economy. So despite Petro's limitations, I think that's a huge change compared to now with Duque.
That's true. That's true. I was reading a few minutes ago something about that, border relationship between Venezuela and Colombia. I was reading the problems again happened today with Colombian residents in Venezuela trying to get into Cucuta, to cross the international bridge to vote in the voting centers that they displayed near the bridge. The border bridge with Colombia, and there was again today, like in the first round, problems with people not being allowed to pass, and I don't know why the Venezuelan National Guard is trying to coordinate with the Colombian authorities. I believe that today again they, stop the passing of people under Colombian request because they are the ones that allowed or not allowed people to enter the country. But I believe the Venezuelan National Guard tries to keep some sort of order there. But again, there was a crash there and people jumped the Venezuelan National Guard trying to reach the Colombian side and they were not allowed to pass. And I was reading numbers about what happened in the first round, and I read that 3,500 people managed to vote. I'm talking about Colombian residents in Venezuela out of 130,000. So that gives you an idea on how the vote suppression technique, I call it like that because I really believe that the Colombian authority didn't want to find alternative ways to allow Colombians to vote. At least the ones here in Venezuela. But anyway, I believe that what you're saying is true. I mean, the situation right now is check if the oligarchy in Colombia will allow Petro to really do change, and on the other side to really understand the real intentions of Petro and how left or center he is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we look at his platform, there are a few things that he has proposed that I think are realistic. One of the things that he has stressed is diversifying the Colombian economy. And, the Colombian economy is largely built, aside from drug trafficking, on fossil fuel exports. Although what's interesting is that Venezuela is often condemned as like this inefficient petro state, whereas there's less discussion of Colombia's oil exports. And Petro said he wants to diversify the economy, and part of that strategy is to do land reform. And that's when he's really going to face problems because the Colombian oligarchy has never allowed land reform. That's what La Violencia was fought all over. I mean, for decades there was violence across the country because of the refusal of the oligarchy to do land reform. And the campesinos in Colombia are brutally repressed. So I think that is going to be another issue, aside from Venezuela normalization, that Petro is really going to face backlash on, his attempt to have land reform. Let's not forget that one of the main reasons that there has been an armed movement in Colombia for decades, and Petro was himself a guerrilla in M19, an armed group, is over the question of land reform. And the government has refused tooth and nail. And now he has won state power, likely, unless they steal the election. But it does look like that Petro won. So the question is going to be, what's going to happen to the paramilitary groups that are killing campesinos and organizers? Will the paramilitary groups try to wage a protracted war against the government of Petro? And of course, the paramilitary groups, in addition to their links to the Colombian deep state, are also backed by oligarchs. So are they going to wage a kind of unconventional war against the state? 2, are the Colombian paramilitaries going to collaborate with the military against Petro, or will the military go in different directions? That's another question we need to ask, because Zapatero, who is the top general of the military, violated Colombian law by publicly making statements against Petro. So we already know that the military leadership is antagonistic against the president-elect. Is Petro going to be able to successfully purge the military to change the leadership? If not, is the military going to team up with paramilitaries against him? I mean, it's really historic, and I think we should be glad to see that the left has won in Colombia, but we also need to be very open, clear-eyed, and very realistic about his prospects. And like I said, Colombia is not a democracy, and Petro is really up against a lot of forces that don't want him to accomplish the main parts of his program, especially land reform.
And you have to add to that the the formation of the forces within the Congress in Colombia, that, as far as I remember from the early elections this year, we're not as, we're good, we're positive for Pacto Histórico, but overall, I believe that they don't have a majority there. And I haven't read too many things about possible alliances and things like that make one believe that at least they are going to manage to have 50% over the Senate and the House, the deputy chamber. So that's another thing that Petro is going to have to deal with, besides what you are saying, besides the whole status quo that has been controlling Colombia, the oligarchy and the military strata that has been governing that country for decades, if not centuries. So it's complicated, and I believe that I haven't checked the numbers while we were talking, but I noticed that from the last report that I saw, compared with the previous one, the gap between Hernandez and Petro was shrinking, and not too much, but was shrinking, and that shouldn't be the tendency, and that raise alarms in people like us that are used to monitor elections, and that we know that the ones that usually come last are the ones from the countryside. And usually the countryside is with the progressive guy. And if you notice a change of pattern, that the one that I noticed, that might be bad news. But who knows? I'm just, guessing.
Yeah, well, looking at the results, it looks like over 97% has been counted, and they say that it's pretty clear that Petro won. It looks very unlikely that Hernandez will be able to fill that gap, although I remember when there was something similar in Honduras, right? And then the power went out, and then when the power came back, suddenly the right wing was winning. But it does look like the Colombian oligarchy was unable to steal this election. I should mention that Petro has accused the Colombian government of stealing the last election, and with some evidence, the current president, the far-right president, Iván Duque, was only able to come to power because he stole the election basically by buying votes with drug money, and that was facilitated at the orders of Álvaro Uribe through a drug dealer named Ñeñe Hernandez, who died in mysterious circumstances. But That said, what this election also shows, another key takeaway from this election, is that Uribismo is dead. Uribismo is the right-wing political movement that has dominated Colombian politics for 2 decades, named after the former president Álvaro Uribe Vélez, who was president for 2 terms, and then the current president is his successor, his hand-picked successor, Iván Duque. And in the first round of the election, Uribe's stand-in, Federico Gutiérrez, was defeated, which was one blow to Uribismo. And now the right-wing candidate, Rodolfo Hernández, that all of the Uribistas had unified behind, has also been defeated. So one of the positive takeaways from today is that the Uribista movement is done. I don't think it can come back. And I think that the reason it was defeated is largely because so many people could see how closely it was linked to corruption, to drug trafficking, to the paramilitaries, and to violence. And in fact, Rodolfo Hernández, the right-wing candidate in the second round here, he had actually kind of run criticizing Uribismo. So the first round election really showed that the 2 winners in first and second place were the left-wing candidate, Petro, and then Rodolfo Hernández, who was like a right-wing critic of Uribismo. So this victory by Petro in defeat of the right-wing candidate, I think really shows that there is a new era coming in Colombian politics. Although, again, I would caution against too much optimism, because in Peru, which of all the countries in Latin America, Peru is probably the most similar to Colombia. I mean, of course, Colombia has its own unique history, but in Peru, there was never really a left-wing leader. When there was the wave of progressive governments across the region, Peru and Colombia were really exempt from that. And in Peru, of course, we saw last year the historic election of Pedro Castillo, but we see that he has been unable to accomplish very much, despite the fact that he did win with a pretty substantial mass movement behind him. He didn't have a majority in the Congress, which has prevented him from passing any legislation. It has tried to impeach him 2 times in less than a year. And his military services in Peru have also been really rising against the elected president. And at the beginning of his term, Castillo's foreign minister was forced to resign, Héctor Béjar, by the military. So I think, if we see what happened in Peru, I think it's very likely something similar will happen in Colombia.
I agree with what you say about Uribismo. Uribismo is completely, we cannot say that in politics, but it seems that it is death. But while you were talking, I was thinking about the numbers, and I was wondering, how is that possible that still 40-something% of the people in Colombia voted for that crazy guy that has been doing crazy stuff with the video, with the bikini party that he have in Miami, calling Almagro head of the United Nations instead of head of the OAS. And there are zillions of examples like the 2 that I'm mentioning, and still 48% of Colombians voted for that guy. That's I don't know. I just wanted to highlight that because if they ask them to vote for Guaidó, maybe they will vote for him also.
Yeah, well, we should keep in mind who Rodolfo Hernández is. This is the candidate of the oligarchy. So he doesn't necessarily represent Uribismo, but you could say he represents another kind of right-wing oligarchic force in Colombian politics. His wealth is estimated at $100 million. He made his wealth in the real estate industry, so he's extremely corrupt, which is ironic because Rodolfo Hernández ran on an anti-corruption platform ostensibly, and his party is called the League of Anti-Corruption Governors, even though he is himself under investigation for corruption. And you can't get $100 million in real estate without being involved in corruption. So the fact that he was defeated is significant, also considering that, again, the Uribistas unified behind him. The night of the first round of the election, when Federico Gutiérrez, the candidate Uribismo, lost, that same night, he endorsed Rodolfo Hernández. and many other Uribista politicians endorsed Hernandez. So despite the fact that the entire right wing unified behind him and he was unable to win, I think that really shows that a lot of Colombians do want change. Although, again, we should reflect on the fact that this victory for Petro is very narrow. So it does show that he doesn't have a majority in Congress. He only won very narrowly, not in a landslide. And many state institutions, including the military, are against him. So it's going to be very difficult for Petro to govern.
Thank you for joining us today, Ben. I know that you are busy.
Yeah, I'm about to go jump on an interview with Telesur. So thank you for having me. It was great. You all do amazing work. It's always a pleasure.
Un abrazo.
Igualmente.
Thank you, Ben. You know, one thing I'm thinking, Jesus, we're about to go live to some of the celebrations, but when we talk about the vote, I don't think we were incorrect in saying that there was massive fraud, massive intimidation. We know people that were threatened directly. We know people in the community that we were close to that have been killed. We you know, in pre-electoral violence, we all saw irregularities. You know, there's a lot of people that voted for the right wing, but I bet there's more than what the official tally is that actually voted for the center-left.
There's a bunch of people that just don't go vote because of many reasons.
Right. Let's bring on the live celebrations. We've got some celebrating going on. I know I'm celebrating. Can maybe who's ready to roll?
Hi, so I'm here in Bogota. I'm actually at the communist headquarters, and I don't know if you can hear the music. I'm like trying to be far enough away that you can hear me, but you can hear people like listening to music. Everyone's in there, you know, singing all the classic songs, just cheering. Everyone's very, very happy here, especially because I know a lot of comrades here who've been working really hard in the past couple of weeks with the campaign. So in general, a lot of people are just here and just like really happy. Yeah, and it's great here. We have somebody to interview and talk to. Sorry, it's a bit chaotic, but I'm just going to show a little bit of here. People happy. Yeah, people here celebrating. So we're just going to find somebody to interview. I'm not sure if I can be in here. Okay. So, yes. Okay, come in. So we're going to do a quick interview here with someone here at the communist headquarters. So we're going to do this with like translation. So, okay, okay, so do you want to, primero, ¿cuál es nombre? ¿Quién tú eres?
Yo me llamo Homero Ordóñez, trabajo con el Partido Comunista de Seguridad hace 20 años. En este momento estoy con la Juventud Comunista a nivel nacional. Me siento muy contento, muy orgulloso a pertenecer al glorioso Partido Comunista Colombiano y poderle servir para seguir luchando por este país.
So he just said that he here is part of the Communist Party. He's been working with the Communist Party for about 20 years, doing like security, and he's just like really proud and happy with the victory and everything that they've done and been able to accomplish, and just you know that they fought so hard and that they're like excited to keep fighting and just to like see the change, but to keep fighting and continue the fight for a better country and a better future. Okay, yes. So yeah, that's the general sentiment I have. So yeah, that's
I'm wondering. So I don't know how it is for everybody else, but I'm sitting here in Cali. I've been hearing people blasting the national anthem. just hearing people shouting in the streets. It sounds like a party out there. I don't know, maybe maybe Hernandez could still pull it off, but we were hearing from the group in Cali at Petro headquarters, and I think it would really be nice if we could get them on here now and show just a little bit of the atmosphere, people celebrating. Hey, there we have you. You're on mute. She is mute. We can't hear you. Aminta, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. Hello, Aminta, we can't.
Yes, she doesn't. She doesn't.
We're the ones that. Okay.
Listen.
Can we try one more time?
I just wrote in the chat. Meanwhile, we recover Aminta that the difference between Hernandez and Petro is getting smaller, and that doesn't look nice for me, especially when what I commented with Ben. I mean, usually the last votes that arrives are the ones from the countryside, and they are usually with the leftist candidate most of the time. So this reduction doesn't sound good to me. But anyway, I believe that they already counted more than 97, 98%, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the page of
Registraduría.
Of El Tiempo, who is giving it. I don't know, but yeah, it's not saying.
This change of trends, it was at some point at 4-something points of difference,
right,
between the two candidates, and right now it's a little bit more than 3 with the last numbers that I was watching in Telesur, and it's that reduction is not normal,
Right.
So it's against the trends. So. But we know, I mean, how things move, especially around elections in Colombia. Camila, Aminta is here, I believe.
Okay.
She's having trouble.
Well, let's go ahead and go to Camila then, and then just when we can get through. When we can get through the Cali folks, let's bring them on board.
Fine. Camila is here already with us.
Welcome,
Camila. Everyone
Hi
knows
there.
Camila. Everyone knows Camila, but let me introduce her. I mean, she is a journalist. She worked for several years for Telesur, and now she is with Causa Chung News from Bolivia, and they do an amazing job reporting about everything that happens in Bolivia, but also all over Latin America. Welcome, Camila.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I, like you guys, am also keeping track of what's going on Telesur, which generally has the best coverage, and obviously it has a lot of, they have a lot of connections to Colombia specifically. So, but we are also posting on our Twitter timeline the results, and so they're at, in terms of tables counted, 99.45%. So almost 99.5%. Nationally, and like you said, Jesus, just a minute ago, it's about just over a 3% difference between the two candidates, which is slightly reduced, but the registrar came out just around, let's say, 98%, and he said we were able to count all, nearly all of the tables within 50 minutes, which is very fast in this non-binding preliminary pre-count. And so, obviously, that in, these sorts of scenarios, it does leave some space for a little bit of, arguments from
legal battles,
the candidate. So we
legal
don't know what
battles,
can
for
happen.
example.
And I've also heard from the Center for Economic and Policy Research that, they're saying it is a little bit close to call, that we can't quite say yet that Petro has won. But we have seen this banner across Telesur, Gustavo Petro, new president of Colombia, the Progressive International. They broke the news, long ago, saying that their board member, Gustavo Petro, has been elected as the new president of Colombia, as well as Reuters and the mainstream media. So most people have said so far, they've come out with that declaration. We, of course, are just posting those preliminary results, and we'll wait to see what the registrar says officially as well, because they'll be making declarations based on their pre-count, and then when they start getting in those official binding counts as well.
Yes. What do you think? Do you hear me well?
I hear you, yes.
Now that we're talking about the difference and between the two candidates, I was thinking about this recent incident with the judge asking the two candidates to have the debate that never happened because a lot of people believe that Hernandez doesn't have anything to go into a debate. But that reminds me about the ways of the judicial system and how it can be used in circumstances like that, like this one with a victory with a small margin to mess up everything. So that's a scenario that ones have to think about, right? Or not?
Absolutely. I'm not surprised at all that he wouldn't have wanted to debate because he is a right-wing candidate that is, being supported currently by the establishment, but who has really no substance. I mean, this is the person who, like much of the right wing, is just going to use power for their own advantage and for the advantage of those around them. But in terms of what they need to debate, I mean, they have absolutely nothing to debate and no proposals and no project. Their project is the default project of all of the right wing of Latin America, which is this project of US imperialism, of the Monroe Doctrine, of this national security doctrine, and the war on terror, the war on drugs, depending on where you are in the world. Here in Latin America, it's been the war on drugs in recent decades. And, and also installing those NATO bases and those US military bases around our continent. That's the program that he has. And that doesn't sound very good in a debate scenario. He's not going to want to talk about those points. What he will be talking about is those same points about anti-corruption and about, corruption and governance. Although he's the only candidate, of the main contenders in the first round who had any, corruption trials or cases that they were involved in. So beyond that, he doesn't really have any talking points. So it's no surprise at all whatsoever. So I think I was told just a second ago by Ollie here that unofficially Gustavo Petro kind of, has kind of declared himself winner. Maybe not on Twitter, that is, not overtly. So we're waiting for those statements now and hope. Is this just a video?
Yes.
And okay,
Okay,
so I have a tweet here from President Ivan Duque. He says, I called Gustavo Petro to congratulate him as president-elect of the Colombians. We agreed to meet in the coming days to initiate a harmonious, institutional, and transparent transition. There you go. Ivan Duque, president of Colombia, president of the paramilitary state, has accepted that defeat. So really interesting, but of course we know that the United States has been looked for, many, many months and probably years. In fact, when the Pacto Histórico decided that they were going to come together as a coalition and have this candidate, which they knew the candidate obviously was going to be Gustavo Petro, the United States knew that they needed to start thinking about how they're going to be working with this new president. And for them, it's of course not the worst case scenario. This is someone who we know, maybe you've spoken about this, Jesus, who continues to demonize the president Nicolas Maduro and the Bolivarian process and the government there that's constitutional and democratically elected. And so, this is possibly, a win for the left. They consider it a win, but I think that there could have been a worst case scenario for the US. So it seems as if perhaps they are going to just go ahead and try to find a way to work with this Pacto Histórico government.
I think when we're looking at what's going on in Colombia, it's very important to look beyond the governments. I think what I've seen after, like 15 years of coming to Colombia, spending a lot of time in the most remote areas of the countryside, also getting to know unionists and everything, what I have been a steady growth of popular power starting. I'm thinking about in 2008, we were advocating for unilateral exchange of prisoners of war between the FARC and the government, or not an interchange. The government didn't join, but the FARC did. They started releasing people. And then in 2012, we just saw people demanding peace. I remember marching with 1.2 million people in the streets of Bogota or observing the march, demanding peace, not letting the peace process die. Then there was the indigenous Minga and the agrarian strike of 2013, which led to, the peace process, which finally the government, in 2012, it finally, due to the foundation of the Marcha Patriótica, super important, forced the government to negotiate for peace. Then again, the various Mingas, various national and agrarian strikes, and then the uprising, millions of people in the street. We were here in 2019 to see millions of people in the streets in Colombia. And then again on September 9th, 2020, when hundreds of thousands of people took the streets of Bogota to demand an end to police brutality. And then the national strike of 2021. And I think the thing is about the election of Petro and Marquez, that's way more important than what they say, what their positions are, is that the only reason they came to power was because they rode the wave of the popular movement. And I don't think that popular movement's going to back down. I was there in Plaza Bolivar for the final campaign of Francia Marquez and Gustavo Petro. And I'm just telling you, that square was a sea of red flags. The popular movement that brought him to power are more left, more anti-imperialist, more committed to the Segunda Independencia than Petro and Marquez is. And I think that's the real victory we're celebrating today, not the victory of Petro and Marquez, but the fact that the popular movements in Colombia seem to be unstoppable.
Yes, that's good news. That's good news. We have to jump to the street again, guys. I believe that we have people from the. Yes, finally, we hear you. Thank you, Camila.
I cannot hear you, but I can say that the reason why I can't hear you is very good because there's an incredible crowd live here from Cali. Everybody celebrating. Absolutely electric, incredible. What a historic win for Colombia. And this means so much for not only Latin America, but around the world as well. This is so fantastic. I'm really left speechless. I feel like before the election results came in, we were all pessimistically, cautious, but now, wow, what a relief, I think, for all of us here to be seeing this incredible, fantastic crowd right here. I don't know what I can't hear anyone, but I guess.
I think one of the things you can see there too is that this was a victory for young people.
Yes, you see a lot of people there. That's true. And it's I was thinking about what Camila read on the from Duque, and it's surprising. I'm in shock that he jumped that fast on Twitter to recognize the victory of Petro, which can have a different lectures, readings. Maybe he's just not happy with Hernandez, or there's a struggle there between the right wingers that are Urivistas and the ones that are with Hernandez. I don't know. What do you think about it, Camila?
Yeah, I think think, maybe one part of it is just all of the mainstream media outlets calling this election just like Telesur, the progressive alternative outlets. So maybe he just went ahead and said, there's no way to fight this. The best way to fight, a leftist or a social democratic candidate, of course, is to get into their government and try to destabilize it from within and try to get, the different actors inside of it. And it's, there's a very wide, very broad coalition of people who's bringing this candidate to the presidency, if that is the case. And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for them to bring all sorts of different characters and all sorts of interests. And it's going to be, a very difficult road ahead. So, maybe they're just prepared to just start that process. But like you said, maybe there's something else as well. Maybe Ivan Duque is not so fond of the person who ended up getting to the second round and sees this as, doomed to fail. So, he has to pick his battles one way or the other. But, as well, all of the electoral, the larger, more resourced electoral observer missions and parties and candidates, they all have their own way of tabulating the results officially. And so, maybe they have their own numbers and maybe he's looking at what that is. He's not looking at this preliminary count, and he's looking at the final count, and he's saying that this is irreversible.
That's fine. That's fine. It's good for Colombia, and I believe that it's good for Latin America overall. I mean, that might signifies this path to the left or center left or whatever you want to call it, pink tide or whatever, that many people has been dreaming of in recent months. And now that the Brazilian elections are coming, and Lula seems to be the possible next president of Brazil again, and one, is especially we in the left got optimistic because we know that will be a big blow for the U.S. especially. In a moment where the U.S. and the U.S. empire is cracking, it's like maybe it might sound exaggerated, but I have the impression from here that it's falling apart, that it's breaking down at this moment. Maybe it's exaggerated.
The worst case scenario for Washington is to have another AMLO. AMLO is supposed to be the center leftist. He's supposed to be a social democrat who criticizes the human rights of these other countries that are supposed to be the bad guys. And in fact, AMLO has been the person who has been defending Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua against sanctions and blockade, and has been saying that the United States and Europe, the EU, has no room to speak about the situation of human rights in other countries, day after day in his morning press conferences and at other opportunities as well. And so, this is the sort of left that we're starting to see elected. And on the one hand, this might be, the kind of left that the United States is more willing to work with. That works fine if they're allowing the U.S. to come in and put down a bunch of new military bases. But if it's going to be a left that is against that foreign presence in their country and, speaking out in international spaces about the crimes of imperialism in different countries and focusing on the nationalization of natural resources and industries, while also, increasing trade with our neighbors, as well as with, countries that's normally forbidden to do trade with overseas, and, that South-South cooperation and integration. If that's going to be the focus, then that's a sort of left that the U.S. doesn't want. So it's difficult to say what Gustavo Petro is going to be like, as we've said, but I think it's very straightforward, to know what Lula's presidency proposes. Lula, the PT has just very concrete links and ties to the mass movements in Brazil. And these are massive movements. They're the biggest movements of our entire continent, as you guys know. These movements of, rural workers, homeless workers, and there's so many of them. It's not just that there's one of each. There are many different organizations that work for the rights of people without housing and that live in precarious situations, and for land and agrarian reform. And these are just completely tied up with the PT. So even though they're going to have, you know, some liberal and centrist elements that are promoting or that are supporting their bid to bring Lula back to the presidency again, I think it's very clear that they want to turn things around this time, and that they're not going to you know, let the sort of things happen that happened to Dilma Rousseff when she was the victim of lawfare in 2016 and removed in the coup. So it's very, very exciting. You know, we'll see what happens with this final count and what the declarations officially are going to be from the registrar and from the other officials of Colombia. But, you know, this is very, in terms of who's watching this closely, the whole continent, of course, but Brazilians are watching this very closely, and they're very hopeful. They want to see, you know, this tide of leftist parties coming to power. So I think it's very exciting, and you know, we haven't arrived at the campaign period for Brazil yet, but it feels like we're in it right now. It feels like we're in, you know, approaching the final stretch, and it's extremely exciting. We've seen all sorts of just atrocities and human rights crises within Brazil, just like Colombia, and people are ready to turn that around right now, and they're going to do whatever it takes. But I mean, like you said, according to the polls, it seems like Lula and the PT are unstoppable.
Yes, yes, that's true. I just want to add to what you mentioned that, and I haven't said enough, I believe, during the live broadcast, but from the Venezuelan side, from the Chavista side, I mean, that there is a general sentiment also of excitement and happiness because this change in Colombia might signify an improvement in the relations with Colombia that is necessary, is absolutely necessary. And Petro was the only one candidate. I mean, I know that Hernandez said something about resuming relations with Venezuela or something like that, but he was not as emphatic as Petro in that, you know, particular area, and that give me hope as a Chavista, because I mean, disregarding all the threats that comes from Colombia in terms of security, again, I mean, in terms of security threats towards the Bolivarian Revolution, I believe that we need to resume trade relations. We need to resume consular relations, diplomatic relations, because we have one of the most active, you know, borders in the continent, and if the two governments do not talk to each other, I mean, a lot of things happen down there in the border, and no one is willing to solve it. So I believe that many here in Venezuela are very excited and happy for the victory of Petro, and willing to see how to move forward in, you know, rebuilding the relation with Colombia that has been on the floor. I don't know how to say it in English, but
yeah, it's been at the
for,
absolute, you know, lowest
yes,
level.
for like 3 or 4 years already. So
exactly,
let's see
and
what
so
happens.
that's another thing that is very interesting that we're going to be looking out for. I don't know to what extent they're going to jump the gun, if we're going to have to wait till tomorrow, or for more official declarations from the electoral authorities there in Colombia. But it's going to be very interesting to hear the, you know, congratulations from President Nicolas Maduro, Diaz-Canel, and President Daniel Ortega, as well as Luis Arce here in Bolivia. We do have one reaction from Diosdado Cabello, who is a leader of the PSUV, a Chavista leader in Venezuela. He just reacted, "I would like to be brief." Well, I'm translating here. You know how he says it in Spanish. "But the victories of the peoples give me great and immense joy. Colombia voted for change. We wish the greatest success to President Petro and Vice President Marquez. To the Colombian people, a Bolivarian hug. United, we will win." I mean, obviously, everyone in Venezuela must be glued to this as well. And, you know, they're not going to be the first to congratulate. Obviously, you know, there has to be some, well, they have proceeded with some restraint as far as the, you know, the Venezuelan officials haven't wanted to say a whole lot about this election publicly, besides the obvious things that are always said, because of the way in which these accusations swirl around during all elections in all of Latin America, about the intromission of Venezuelan authorities. Now they're saying there's, Russian meddling and things like that. Castro Chavismo is paying for this and that and backing this candidate financially. So it's very difficult to speak about these things outside of the normal terms that, the authorities normally discuss Colombia and Venezuela. So hopefully we'll hear a little bit about that this week. And hopefully, once Gustavo Petro declares himself, president and comes out and gives his speech, it would be very nice to hear that Nicolas Maduro has gotten on the phone with him and congratulated him so that we can see those relations restored. It's absolutely important. And, like you said, it's absolutely absurd to share such a massive land porous border between the two states and have so many problems having to do with transnational criminal organization and narco trafficking and not have a relationship between the two executives or on any diplomatic level.
And the problems of migration. I mean, we have intense migration flows between Colombia and Venezuela. I mean, we calculate that we have like 5-6 million Colombians living here, and the Colombians calculate also that there should be at this point like 2 million or 3 million Venezuelans in Colombia. So that's like a big amount of people moving from one country to the others. And you find here in Venezuela a lot of people that have Colombian blood. I mean, we are the same people, but the Santanderismo, the Monroe Doctrine has been, keeping us apart from each other. And that petty patriotism that has been, so all over Latin America does not help, because if you believe in the concept of Patria Grande, you need to understand that petty patriotism is not taking you anywhere. And that we need to understand that we are the same people from Mexico to Argentina. So I believe that that needs to be reinforced, especially after the victory of Petro in Colombia, between at least among all over Latin America, but at least among Colombians and Venezuelans. What do you think about that, James? You have been too quiet there.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through to a couple people.
I know that you are interacting with other people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was a little bit trying to chase down a couple people that we just can't get through to. I guess Natalia said she thinks they're all too busy.
Maybe they are celebrating and they were not
celebrating, right?
I'm sure they don't have great connection. Like when you're in the middle of things, like the most interesting stuff will happen, but because everybody's on their phone and it's saturated, it's impossible to get on a call. But let's just read another reaction. So here is, what is supposedly Vice President-elect Francia Marquez has just reacted. This is for our grandmothers and grandfathers, women, youth, LGBTIQ plus people, indigenous people, peasants, workers, victims, my Black people, those who resisted, and those who are no longer throughout Colombia. Today, we start writing a new story. So, another implicit declaration of victory there.
That's nice. That's nice. I wanna try to put a hand in my phone also to try to look for those reactions that are important. And sometimes while you are like live, you forget about those things, but those things are
Here's
news.
another one from Sandra Ramirez of the Communist Party, formerly the FARC Party. This triumph belongs to the nobodies, the majorities and elders, the peasantry, the youth, the women, the common people. Let's work for Colombia, for peace, for life. We won. Today, the horrible night in Colombia has ended.
That's nice.
Sounds a little better in Spanish, but but I mean that's a question that I think some of our audience has had, is what has been the the position of the former combatants and peace signatories, some of which are current lawmakers of the Communist Party. But from the very beginning, they cheered on this Pacto Histórico process, and they have always supported Gustavo Petro, even going back to the elections 4 years ago.
And
So-
I'm reading right now. Maybe I believe that James knows about these numbers better than all of us. But anyway, I updating the audience about these numbers. I believe that it's important that right now that you are talking about comunes, the total number of aggressions reported by INDEPAZ since the signing of the peace agreements in 2016 are 1,313 social leaders and human rights defenders killed, 311 massacres, and 320 signers of the peace agreements killed. So those numbers are terrible, and a lot of people outside the left movement, they don't even know that these things happen, and they believe that Colombia is like the sea of tranquility or the heaven of human rights, and the reality on the ground is absolutely going in the opposite direction, right, James?
Yeah, and let's put that in some. Let's put that in a little more perspective. What people don't understand about Colombia. First of all, this issue of the number of people killed in massacres, protesters killed, people killed as a form of social cleansing, the peace accord signers, the defenders of human rights, and the social leaders. Between 2012 and 2016, while the peace accord was being negotiated, at one point the number of political killings even dropped a little bit, but it wasn't rising so sharply. Then when the peace accord went into effect, it rose to something like one person killed every 3 days. When Duque was elected, it was like it rose to one person killed every couple of days. And then like the latter half of his administration, more or less up till today, with there's been some fluctuation, but we've been talking about a rate of about one person killed a day, and that it's been a human rights crisis, and hopefully this election will show some willingness to stem that tide. Of course, there's going to be a backlash from the
sorry for interrupting you. How do you think Petro will address that issue? How do you? What do you think are going to be his the basic first decisions that he have to take to try to address that situation, taking into consideration that he have to deal with the military and the paramilitary and the narco
you're
state.
absolutely right. A military that has already, has spoken, where the generals from the army have spoken out against him. I think it's going to be very hard for Petro to do that. I wanted to, not only reversing the killings, but you have situations in La Guajira on the Colombian side, you just never hear about this, of children, indigenous children, dying of hunger and thirst, of malnutrition, dying, people don't hear about that in Colombia. The massive displacement, they don't hear about that. And how is he going to do it? I think it's going to be very hard for him to do it, just for the exact reasons you said. I believe that there is a will in Colombia for many, many people that people want to see the peace accord succeed. And I think by returning to the peace accord and being serious about the peace accord, that will be one of the most important things he can do. But I really think that this is where we in the United States have got to step up to the plate. Because
not against it, but in favor, right?
In favor of the peace accord and against the violence. Because what we have a Trump administration and the Biden administration that, in the midst of the worst assaults against the people, the worst police violence, the worst killings, they both raised military and security aid to Colombia. I mean, in the midst of when the whole world was watching people in Cali being assaulted by the US funded ESMAD police and seeing people shot down in the streets, their response was to raise military and police aid. And I think the real responsibility to stem this tide is coming from us in the US and linking with the popular movements in the United States, because the fact that Petro has gotten elected is a huge popular victory, but it is absolutely not a break with the empire. Not a break with the empire. It's a step towards democracy. A step towards. It's going to be very difficult. It's not a break with the empire. So we continue struggle, and we at the U.S. have to step up and take responsibility for dismantling our own empire, what it's doing to the world, and by so doing, winning our own liberation.
Yes, that's a good point. And it's a good thing that you raise the thing of the, trying to go back to the peace agreements as the most reasonable path that Petro should take in order to try to, recover the stability in a country that is full of human rights problems. Let's see what happens. In so many levels.
People talk about Venezuela. I mean, I have to look and I have to study this more, but like people talk about how many refugees are coming from Venezuela. But when you look at how many are leaving and how many are entering, it really evens. It's right. It's almost even. So it's just a distortion. The comparisons are distortion. People
and they don't talk about the internal displacements that you just mentioned. Also, the internal displacements in Colombia is huge. I mean, it's something massive, and no one talks too much about. I mean,
millions.
Exactly. Let's see what happens. I hope that he really want to change things at least a bit. I know that it's not going to be easy for him, but I'm with the having lived the experience of watching Hugo Chavez do politics and running a government and fulfilling what he promised. Make me believe that if you really want to promote a change, you can do it. You just have to, have the how I can say it without using bad words, the courage to do it. So I hope that Petro can have a little bit of that courage and really promote a change that benefits the Colombian people that need it, and benefit all us all over Latin America, that we also are going to benefit if there's a change in Colombia.
Well, I think there's the people are going to have to give him that courage, because he's shown a lot of timidity when he's been pushed against the wall. When the U.S. knocks, he answers the door so far. So I think that courage may have to come from without, but the people in the streets have a lot of courage.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, he needs courage, and he needs to have, the correct analysis of what the problems are that Colombia faces. I'm looking at Telesur right now, sorry. So we have official words of congratulations from Gabriel Boric in Chile. He said he just spoke on the phone with Gustavo Petro to congratulate him for his triumph in the presidential election, along with Francia Marquez, Alegría para America Latina. Another one from Daniel Jadue, who is the Communist Party mayor in Recoleta of Chile. And we also have words of congratulation from President AMLO in Mexico, as well as the government of Argentina, and from President Miguel Diaz-Canel in Cuba. So let me see what he said here. He says, "I express my most fraternal congratulations to Gustavo Petro for his election as president of Colombia and a historic popular victory. We reiterate willingness to advance in the development of bilateral relations for the well-being of our peoples. Another statement from his foreign minister, Bruno Rodriguez. And so, it's just pouring in. So I guess it seems pretty, if all these presidents and governments are coming out with their statements, then no one's going to wait for the official count. This is good enough for them.
That's true. I believe that there's people from the reporters out there that are gonna join us, right, James?
I believe so. We're talking about Daniela. Are we talking Daniela Marin or Daniela? Okay, so I think what I'm going to suggest, I was just writing this, but I'm going to suggest that you, Camila, myself, and Shanti talk a little bit together for another, 5 or 10 minutes. Then after that, we'll just bring on we'll say goodbye to Camila and Shanti and bring on Daniela to make the translation easier. And we've already talked to her. She can just do like a 5-minute close up.
If you can, Camila, of course. I know that you might be also in a rush.
Right.
Well,
You can.
Yeah, I do travel tonight, but if you want me to stay while you try to connect your next guest, that's fine. I know that the technical side of things is really tricky.
Yes.
Well, what we could bring on let's bring on Shanti first, then bring on Daniela, and then let's just have some last words. I hear a party going on about half a mile away at the big party on the streets, and I'm
have to go there. You can take your phone and go to the party.
Well, we've seen how that's been working with the phoned-in reports.
Yes,
a lot of people jumping, but not too good sound.
That's true. That's true. But anyway, I believe that it's good all this effort that you are putting, James, and all the guys from the Alliance for Global Justice in, setting up this production. I know that this requires a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and you have been providing something that no one has been providing from the left, and that's absolutely outstanding. I mean, of course, we have Telesur, and we can watch Telesur, but sometimes you need the different voices, different people on the ground, the reporters on the ground showing the people jumping, and
there's Maduro.
like live, tweeted. And that's necessary. And I believe that you are doing a great job here, and I hope that you can replicate this logic, this methodology in other coverage that you might have in the future.
I appreciate that, and I have to just say, I was thinking today that I really wish Chuck was here to see all this.
Yes. I mean, Chuck might be proud of all of you. I'm pretty sure
he'd be proud. Not just this, the Tijuana conference. It's never just us, and Chuck always said it's never just AFTJ. You always want to work with other people, but us and other people working together. In the Tijuana conference that, was an alternative to the fake Summit of the Americas. We have been really active. We had a presence at the AFL-CIO convention and Labor Notes convention, getting word about new work we're doing around labor. And then this Colombia thing is just a culmination. And I think Chuck, he loved classic rock, and I think he would have just been so happy to see that, to see Roger Waters recording a video for us. So I wish he was here to see it. This is a culmination of so many seeds that he and others planted.
Shante is with us now.
Hey,
Not anymore. Maybe she lost connection. That's
Christina, let's bring
there
on.
She is. There she is.
Hey.
Oh. Can you hear me? See me?
Yeah.
Yes. We hear you and see you.
Yes. I'm just outside the headquarters now. A bit quieter, but yeah, people just continuing to celebrate. a lot of like friends and comrades from different parts of the city have sent me like videos of just people out on the street. So I definitely think it is an exciting time, but also, you know, there's still like a lot of work to do, you know, and I think, you know, even like having like Petro as president, I know someone kind of mentioned this before, but you still have, you know, the economic structures that the U.S. has a lot of influence, so you still have a lot of like structural things that, you know, they're not going to go away and they still need to be dealt with. But, you know, the thing with Petro that was like really different from the other candidates is his commitment to the peace deal. And since 2016, since the peace deals were signed, those have just been like, they basically haven't been implemented. They've basically been ignored. You know, the last 2 years have been some of the deadliest years in like Colombian history, even including years before the peace deals. So we're really just hoping to see that like some of these people who did like, you know, experience so much violence, who are displaced, that they're actually going to see some justice, and we're actually going to see some of the like material conditions change for people here. So there is still a lot of work to do. And, you know, I've spoken to people in different movements, popular movements in Medellin, who know that, you know, even if this happens, they still have work to do, and that doesn't mean it's like that we're going to like give up the fight. The popular fight, there's still things to do. You know, imperialism still has this power very like deep in this country. And then also a classic, you know, once you have a leftist in power, the U.S. doesn't usually like that. So, you know, a lot of things to like look to, a lot of work to be done. But in general, yeah, it's like really great to see just the energy, especially considering how anxious people have been the last couple of days.
Listen, Chante, do you hear us? Do you hear me? Can you hear me? No.
I think we lost her.
She got
She
disconnected.
couldn't hear you.
I wanted to ask her about the addresses of the parties, because with that information, yes, you can jump there afterwards.
Right. Well, I can. Well, we got Christina here. Maybe we can get Shanti back for a quick question. Christina, are you
might
on?
need to know where people are gathering out there in Bogota or in other places in Colombia.
Well, I can tell you what. You go in Cali, you go to the Parque Loma de Cruz, and then just head towards the crowd. There's a big one out there.
Let's see if they can join us, but
I'll bet people are in the Plaza Bolivar.
Did you see them? I mean, are they still there celebrating, or you see them earlier?
Do
you hear me?
Yes, you can bring Christina and Chante on, or.
Estoy ayudando, me tienes que estresarte en mi
Hello. How are things going there?
We're super happy.
I'm coming back
I can't believe what's going on. Here in Zipaquirá, people are pretty quiet, but we see like a couple of cars driving around with flags and signs of Petro. Like most people are really happy all around the news. We see people celebrating all over the country, and hearing you guys as well. It's very emotional. But yeah, lots of people just going around their normal Sunday business. And we got back together with the Procuradora, the women we felt hijacked by earlier when we were at the biggest voting station in Zipaquirá. And before she had said, I vote for Rodolfo, and now she drove us to our hotel, and she said, I'm completely apolitical. I don't know anything about politics, and she still wanted us to come to her house. So that was also a little weird but positive experience. So yeah, we're super excited. It's still like Chante also said, this is the beginning. I'm Danish. I'm a bit of a natural pessimist. So of course I start thinking, okay, are the Uribistas gonna let go without a fight, or what's gonna happen? Because there's still this whole discourse about Petro wanting to make the country into Venezuela. If the United States are going to go in on that, and that saying that he won or fraud, or what do I know? But the good thing is that we're so many international observers, and also the CNA and the jurors and the everyone has been saying that these elections have been super transparent, that everything has been working fine. And I think it's super important that we get that message out now, so we can say this was actually democracy and not a socialistic fraud made by some madman, even though he might be a little mad too. But yeah, super excited. Going back to the hotel now. It's raining. It's been sunny all day when people were in the queues and voting. And now it's raining, so yeah, we're gonna go to the hotel and we're tired and relax a little bit.
Before you go, I just, a hug you and Edwa, and hugs to you and Edwa. Good to see y'all. Good to hear from you.
Thank you, James. Igualmente.
It's been great getting to know you.
Right back at you. This was a great effort of everybody, and yeah, it's just emotional to know that all the fights haven't been for nothing. I think we missed the live from Cali. I'd love to hear some more from Cali, but because here it's very calm.
They're pretty happy, I think. Whoa!
We talked to the registrator, the official registrator of. They have like it's like how many ¿cuántas municipalidades? 30 municipalities. And she gave us some papers, information about here, all the mesas in Zipaquirá, the tables, voting tables, and was super nice as well. And said we were welcome to contact her if we needed any more information. But they will be until 12 o'clock. They will be doing the scrutiny, and all night, all day. They will be tomorrow. Very dependent on possible social uprising, protests, whatever could happen. Like that's how it works.
I guess it's not over.
So I don't know what they mean, celebration or what's gonna happen. But we'll be checking the news and.
Well, thank you very much.
You want to hear a short commentary from Edward? He's actually Colombian and was in the paro.
Sure, yeah, that
in
would
the national
be
strike. ¿Quieren escuchar de ti? Como colombiano.
Wow.
Parte del
En
movimiento.
español, yo hablo en español.
Dale, que se
Claro que sí.
Diles hola.
Hola, hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Muy feliz aquí saludándolos desde estas buenas noticias, sabiendo que Colombia ha sido un país construido a punta de plomo, y lo ideal de esto es que el concepto se unifique. Lo ideal de esto es que la misma fuerza que todos somos los latinos, que todos somos los colombianos, se una hacia un mismo enfoque, hacia una misma dirección, hacia un mismo propósito y hacia algo mejor, porque no puede ser peor. Ya, gracias por esto, estoy muy contento. O sea,
pues
ya lloré mucho ayer. Así que estoy muy contento de vivir esto, porque por primera vez en la historia, la izquierda o el populismo, que somos buenas personas, queremos vivir mejor, o lo que sea, como sea, lo siento, estoy muy emocionado, estoy muy contento de vivir esto, y deseo mucho que realmente esto sea para un bien mayor, y que toda la misma fuerza, que somos un mismo país, se direccione y se enfoque hacia algo muy bueno. Eso.
Es muy feliz hablar contigo y con Cristina y Edward. Gracias para tenernos en tu país, estar acá con ustedes y compartir esta celebración de la democracia. No socialismo, pero es algo.
La democracia.
Más que socialismo, más que derecha, izquierda, más que todas esas cosas que por los que se han matado mucha gente, realmente es por vivir mejor, por realmente poder vivir en mi país. A veces es por el bienestar, por la vida, para que esto funcione hacia algo mejor, es lo que puedo decir realmente. Estoy muy contento, estoy muy contento, realmente estoy muy contento de esto. Y quiero decir que que esto es el inicio de algo mejor y lo más importante para para nuestra gente, para esta sociedad, como siempre lo reitero, nuestro país es una sola fuerza y lo he dicho anteriormente, somos una sola fuerza, somos los mismos colombianos. ¿Qué pasa? Que está polarizado y es importante que estos conceptos de distorsión y de desinformación se usen para que sea algo más bueno, algo más lindo, para que esta fuerza se conecte, para que esta fuerza sea para un mismo propósito. Eso es lo que yo quiero. Gracias, estoy muy contento, estoy muy contento. Yo sé que no se nota, pero estoy muy contento de celebrarlo. Soy colombiano y así lo vivo, ¿sabes? Así que gracias por esto. Sí.
Pues nos vemos pronto, abrazos y creo que vamos a hablar un momento con Daniela González.
Bueno.
Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias.
¡Abrazos!
Hola, Daniela.
Hola.
Deseo que estábamos juntos.
Sí.
Hola.
¿Y dónde está Eduardo? ¿Dónde está Eduardo Correa? ¿No
Eduardo
está?
Correa estaba en el Hotel Sheraton con Aarón, con nuestro compañero Aarón y otras compañeras y compañeros. Después de ahí ya se trasladaron al Ángel de la Independencia a festejar, James, a festejar porque este triunfo es un triunfo histórico. Es un triunfo histórico para los pueblos de Colombia y para los pueblos también de toda la región, de todo el continente, y también atraviesa a todos los pueblos del mundo. Estamos realmente muy emocionados.
Perdón, yo estaba olvidando de traducción. Vamos a tener a Tania traducir para nosotros.
Hi. Yeah, just Daniela saying that people have gone out to celebrate, that obviously this is a very historic time, not just for Colombians, but for everyone in the world, everyone in Latin America. So there's a lot of excitement on the streets and people are celebrating.
Daniela, you and I...
¿Sí? Dime, James.
I just wanted to say you and I have struggled side by side in this together for a long time now. We've been comrades to each other. This is a struggle we've for years now, and I just I don't know what I have to say except I wish I was there to drink a little bit of mezcal with you and make a toast to this culmination that we're celebrating briefly. We know the struggle continues, but right now we can celebrate a little bit, right?
James dice que pues Daniela, tú y él han sido compañeros en esta lucha por mucho tiempo ya, has pasado por años ya esta lucha, pero es bueno que ya podemos celebrar, no significa que la lucha termina, sigue, pero sí hay un momento aquí para celebrar porque estamos a un paso adelante.
Así es, James, sí, es verdad. Es como le decimos también a todas esas grandes mujeres dignas de Colombia. Ya lloramos, porque este día y este momento es muy histórico, James. Tú lo sabes, Colombia la tenemos en nuestro corazón. Y así como acá en México lo vivimos en el 2018, el día de hoy igual, porque Colombia la tenemos en nuestro corazón, la llevamos, todas sus luchas, todas sus resistencias son las nuestras, y tú lo sabes, como bien lo dices, nos ha hermanado también ese hermoso pueblo, su digna lucha, su resistencia, y también le mandamos un mensaje de mucha fuerza a nuestras compañeras mujeres colombianas, que son una fuente de esperanza, de dignidad y de resistencia para seguir adelante. Ellas también, este día, pues que está encabezada por esta gran mujer negra, que es Francia Márquez, representa una gran esperanza para todas las mujeres de toda nuestra región.
Yeah, so Daniela wants to give a special message to the women of Colombia who, you know, have inspired us with their dignity, with their strength. And Colombia is in our hearts. And just like they lived in Mexico in 2008, the elections, the same thing is happening in Colombia. So the struggles of Colombia, the pains, everything they've been through, it's ours. But their dignity, their resistance is inspiring. And you know, women in particular, Colombian women, have been the signs of hope, have been a sign of resistance. And you know, that's represented with Francia Marquez, who is a Black woman, and you know, she's leading this on and creating she's an inspiration for so many, for women all over the world and for people. And so yes, the women of Colombia have shown us what it is to fight.
Mira, quiero decir algo brevemente antes de cerramos. Incluso que necesito aprender la luz, es en otro cuarto, yo continuaré acá. Pero yo recuerdo por muchos años, y nosotros hemos hablado de esto también, Daniela, por muchos años, diciendo que si cambió México, Colombia y el Perú, que estos países eran como la espina del imperio en las Américas. Y si estos países cambiaron, sí, que el mundo cambiará. Que cambiaría, que el mundo. Héctor Merino es tratando de llamarme también. Pero ahora tal vez no es el cambio contundente. Cada de estos países tienen luchas que van a continuar y congresos en Perú y Colombia muy difícil. Pero hemos visto un cambio increíble y yo he visto que cambiaría las Américas y los Estados Unidos de América y el mundo. Y con esto en mente, hemos visto estos cambios en estos tres países. Consciente de esto, de esta celebración y de la lucha que continúa contra el imperio y para la liberación de todos nuestros países, incluso mío y el mundo, tienen todos ustedes, Tania también, Shanti, Daniela, una reflexión final antes de cerramos el programa.
So just to translate what James was saying, him and Daniela and many others have talked before in the past that, you know, if there was change in Colombia as well as in Mexico and Peru, these countries that in a way sort of represent the thorn of empire in the Americas, then we could really see change in Latin America and see change, real change happening around the world. And so we're witnessing this change happening, and you know, this change is coming. And with this in mind, you know, what do we all think? How are we all reflecting on that, and what we will see happening next?
Chantel, ¿tú quieres?
Sí, yo puedo. In English or in Spanish? Okay. What? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah, definitely, you know, like I said, definitely like still like a lot of like work to be done, but it's definitely like a very exciting time, even just to have like someone who is like a very left-wing candidate, I think win, like says a lot about, and like has a lot of possibility of like, you know, opening up the country to, you know, like more radical ideas. So yeah, like it is essentially a huge victory just knowing, you know, how Colombia has such strong ties, you know, to imperialism. It's like very much a strategic point for the United States, being so close to Venezuela, being close to, you know, other places there, in terms of its resources. So yeah, really just like looking forward to this and like really hoping that this is the first step towards, you know, the Colombia that I think like Colombia could be, you know, a Colombia for people, a Colombia where, you know, all the resources and amazing people who live here, you know, are being used for them and people like really have, you know, dignity and access to like democracy. Because yeah, Colombians, it's like such an amazing country, such great people. So I'm just really happy right now that this happened. I was very afraid, anxious for days, like many people here. So I'm very glad to see, you know, this result. And yeah, really, I think it's a really exciting time in Colombia.
Oh. ¿Mi en español? O... Sorry. Oh.
You want me to give a short summary in Spanish of what I said?
Sí.
Sí.
Okay, no, solo estaba diciendo, pues, obvio todavía como hay trabajo, todavía como el camino, tenemos mucho para hacer, pero todavía es un tiempo. Sí, es que estamos re felices para Colombia, que es un país que es de la derecha, que tiene mucha influencia de los Estados Unidos, de empresas multinacionales, que para tener a alguien como presidente quien es de la izquierda, creo que va como a abrir muchas oportunidades, va a abrir las mentes de mucha gente sobre como estas ideas y que creo que pues, por fin estamos en un camino donde la gente de Colombia va a tener como acceso a sus recursos, van a tener trabajo, dignidad, en general van a tener la Colombia que merecen, porque sí son buena gente, es un país bonito, solo con muchos de estos problemas. Entonces es un tiempo, somos feliz y con ganas para continuar la lucha.
Y decir...
Okay, Daniela, ¿quieres darnos una palabra final? Y entonces, Daniela, si ustedes quieren dar una palabra final, y entonces yo voy a cerrar.
Sí, yo pues decir que efectivamente este es un gran paso y como ya lo decían nuestras compañeras y compañeros de Colombia, el día de hoy se está concretando, estamos viviendo una gran fiesta democrática para la humanidad. Y como ya lo decía James, esto lo necesitábamos desde hace muchos años, hoy lo estamos viviendo, es un paso fundamental y es muy importante para seguir avanzando en lograr la liberación de nuestros pueblos de Colombia, pero también de nuestros pueblos de América Latina y así seguir adelante. Es un proceso histórico, por eso es de que el día de hoy estamos con mucha alegría, lo festejamos al lado de nuestras hermanas y hermanos colombianos y colombianas, y decir un mensaje que nos los compartió nuestra compañera Ana Andresa Blanedo, que dice: creo en un país digno que sabe reponerse del dolor y la infamia. Creo en la memoria como guardiana de la libertad. Es la hora de las izquierdas en Colombia, es la hora de la vida, de la paz, de empezar a soñar con la democracia social y de seguir avanzando, de seguir unidas y unidos en estas luchas, porque vamos a seguir siempre construyendo, tejiendo para seguir adelante con nuestras justas luchas y que logremos realmente pues esa paz con justicia social en Colombia y en todo el mundo. Yo cerraría con esa frase que siempre la digo y la seguiré diciendo: la paz de Colombia es la paz de los pueblos del mundo.
So Daniela says, of course, like others have been saying, this is a big step for our comrades. Today, you know, we're having a party of democracy for humanity. It's something that was necessary for many years, and today we're living that. It's a fundamental step to reach liberation for Colombia, but also for the people of Latin America. And we're full of joy and we're celebrating along with our Colombian brothers and sisters. And ¿de quién es la frase, Daniela?
De la compañera Ana Andrés Ablanedo. Ella es de Asturias.
Okay, and Andres Añandero has a quote, and I mean, I wish I could like translate it perfectly, but I didn't really get all of it. But you know, it's a belief of a dignified place for everyone. Our country, the country of Colombia, being a place where we could come together and repair the pain, repair the loss, and keep moving forward toward peace, toward a dignified life, always building, always sewing, always going forward together in our social struggles. And as Daniela always quotes, a peace for Colombia is a peace for the entire world. I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, just to repeat everyone, it's just historic, not just for Colombians, but for everyone in Latin America, for people living, in the Valley of the Beast, as well as me, for people living in the United States. It gives us a lot of inspiration, a lot of hope, and it's also an example of where solidarity needs to take place, and where it is our chance to start building that solidarity, start like straighten it, because Colombia is an example of hope and resistance, and joining that fight will only make us stronger.
Thank you very much. I just want to say then in closing, quiero decir, antes de cerrar, que esta es una combinación de muchas luchas. Para mí, 15 años de lucha, pero para el pueblo colombiano han padecido tanta violencia, tantos ultrajes. I'm just saying, for me, it's a combination of a struggle. For me, it's a struggle I've been involved in for 15 years, but for the Colombian people, they've been involved for so long, for so many years, decades. And this is a culmination of the struggle, pero también es una continuación para la lucha continúa, la lucha sigue, el imperio continúa. It's also a continuation because the lucha continues, the empire struggles. But I'm going to say in 2008, cuando yo empecé a trabajar en Solidaridad de Colombia, mucha gente quería paz por Colombia, pero no tuvieron la fe en la idea de negociaciones y un proceso de paz. Dijeron que no puede confiar en el gobierno ni las FARC, ni el pueblo. A lot of people said a peace process wasn't possible because they said they wanted peace for Colombia, but they didn't believe you could trust the government, that you could trust the FARC, that you could even trust the people. Pero nosotros aboguemos para la paz. Y nosotros pensábamos, pues, yo creo que estas guerrillas son una insurgencia legítima y mucha gente quiere en paz. Y en el gobierno, siempre el gobierno tuvo sus derechistas, pero también personas elegidas por el pueblo. Y era necesario tener fe en todos y en el pueblo. And I'm just saying that we always thought that the guerrillas, they were a legitimate insurgency, and that that they wanted to talk peace. We believe the government, the government had a lot of right-wing power, but there are always people in there who were for, some elected who were for the people, and we believed that they wanted peace. We believed the people wanted peace. We had to have faith. Y incluso en los tiempos más tristes, los tiempos más duros, el pueblo de Colombia continuaron luchar y luchar y luchar sin cesar, o sin terminar, siempre continuando. The Colombian people through the hardest times kept struggling. They never stopped. And I just want to say at the beginning of this show, this broadcast, I asked Kathy Rojas what we could learn from the Colombian people. Cuando empecemos, yo pregunté a Kathy Rojas qué podamos aprender del pueblo colombiana. Ella habló de esto. She talked about this, y yo voy a hablar de esto nuevo. I'm going to speak about it again. Aquí en los Estados Unidos estamos en la panza de la bestia. We're in the belly of the beast in the United States. Y aunque parece que nunca podamos terminar con este imperio y nunca podamos alcanzar la libertad, la lección para nosotros es continuar en la fe que el pueblo va a ganar. So I'm just saying that for us, the lesson, as hard as it seems to bring down the empire and achieve our own liberation, the struggle continues. We continue to struggle. We have the power and we have the faith. A better world's been birthed.
Sí. La lucha sigue.
Así es, James. La lucha continúa. Vive el pueblo digno de Colombia.
Sí. Viva.
Que viva Colombia.
¡Viva
Oh,
Colombia!
Jesús. Una palabra final.
No, viva Colombia, that's it.
Viva Colombia. Okay, ciao.
Viva,
Abrazos
viva.
a todos.
Chao, gracias. Thank you.
Sí.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.